to call to order the January 5th, 2023 regular meeting of the Hendersonville City Council. We begin with a, public comment, and then the invocation. Don't we usually do it the other way?
Yes.
Usually. Yeah.
Why don't we just switch it?
Yeah, let's just
We'll
switch
just,
it.
No, I mean, why don't we do the invocation and pledge?
that's what I was going to do. We'll do it the way we usually do. Starting with a silent invocation for people to pray or meditate as they choose, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. You'll rise, please. You'll join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now, we allow for public comment time. This evening, we have one person signed up for public comment in person, and that's Ty Kiplinger. And if you would, for the clerk's record, come forward and give your name and address, please.
So my name is Ty Kiplinger, and my address is 19 Excalibur Court, Hendersonville, North Carolina, 28739. So dear Mayor and council members, thank you for having me. My name, as I've mentioned before, is Ty Kiplinger. I am the president of the Hendersonville Kiwanis Club, which is dedicated to improving the world, one child and one community at a time. And so that is what brings me here today. Our club is very excited about the opportunity to partner with the leaders of our community to make the splash pad a possible, not only for the kids and families that are here today, but for the families that will one day call Hendersonville their home. So as a father of young children, it's so important to my wife and I that we have safe places that we can bring our kids, especially when the weather is hot and humid. Your traditional playgrounds can be quite unbearable, or as my little one would say on the slide, it's too hot, Daddy. So our club feels confident that this would not be the case with a splash pad. It will go a long way in bringing so many families and people together. So whether you're a mother, a father, a guardian, a babysitter, a foster parent, a sister or brother, you name it, this will be a place that brings people together. Our club feels that this is truly an investment in our community, in the amenities we want to provide, and in the families we want to attract to our area. On top of that, Patton Park is a great location. It's very important to us that the splash pad is a free option so that it is accessible for all. So once this location is finalized, and I know that's on the agenda today, we feel we as a club will then be able to ramp up our fundraising efforts even more. So on behalf of your Kiwanis Club, we want to thank you for your commitment to our community, and we look forward to partnering with you on this endeavor. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate the efforts you've already put out, and we know more is to come. Thank you. Is there anyone online seeking recognition for public comment?
Madam Mayor, one hand is raised.
Okay. If you could ask that person, again, state name and address for the clerk's record.
Lynn Williams, you are unmuted.
Lynn Williams, Chadwick Avenue. Are you able to hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to start by saying thank you to all the city staff and employees for all the hard work they've done for our community and keeping us safe. And I hope everyone had happy holidays, and may this year ahead of us all be blessed. There's a few things on my mind. One of them is still Boyd Park. 2 years now, begging and pleading with this council to please adjust the site plan to include the historic miniature golf course. It's a very small section of the park. That's all we're asking. Please work with us to make this possible. I beg you, for the 24th meeting in a row. Please, please, please. Secondly, I'd like to discuss briefly the challenges I had when appealing a previous apartment complex that has been proposed on Chadwick Avenue. So I did file an appeal, as you guys know. Apparently I sued you on April Fool's Day of last year to hold you accountable for the mistakes that were made at Chadwick Avenue and Greenville Highway. And it's been a very stressful year. And as you know, yesterday, it was dismissed. I thank you for adjusting the ordinance so that future reviews can happen, like for the project at 12012 Greenville Highway. And I ask this council to please hear the 40-plus residents who have already spoken up and shown up for this upcoming project to help us maintain our neighborhood and our safety and, you know, lessen the flooding. And one other note about the appeal was that the counterclaim was that you would potentially sue me to pay your legal fees. And I just want to point out that as a normal resident, it's very expensive and challenging to fight an appeal with the city council. And when you do, you literally put your life on the line. And I don't think that this is a good way for us to be able to speak up. And I ask you to consider giving us more access and ability to have a voice. So in the year ahead, I just look forward to trying to work together to create a better community. And I will hold each of you accountable as this election year comes up and pay very close attention to your record. And we ask you to put the public interest first over private interests, as is your duty as our elected officials. Thank you again.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Is there anyone else seeking recognition?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We will close our public comment time then. Consideration of the agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to have added to or removed from the agenda at this point? Or if not, a motion to approve the items, to approve the agenda as presented.
Madam Mayor, I move that the City Council approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. We have our agenda. Consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to have moved from the consent agenda to the regular agenda so it can be discussed? I just wanted to say that under the Hallmark movie special application, my daughter said we shouldn't approve it unless she and her friends can be extras in it. I told her that wasn't quite the way it works, so.
I was wondering how we could weasel our way in there.
Yeah. If there isn't anything you would like to have moved, then a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of approving the consent agenda say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it, and we have that taken care of. All right, we have some presentations. We have first of all, two proclamations. And we had a mix-up we don't have the official proclamation here, but we will get it to you within the next day or two, but I do have the text of it, so I would like to go ahead and read that. And I think for the first one, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service, we have two gentlemen coming. All right. Okay. Stand right over here. Okay, and can you tell me your names? Eliana. talk to?
Elion.
Okay.
Ari?
All right, Eliana and Ari, thank you for being here. So this is a proclamation, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. devoted his life to advancing equality, social justice, and opportunity for all, while challenging all Americans to participate in reconcile and the never-ending work of building a more perfect union. And whereas Dr. King recognized that everyone can be great because everyone can serve, requiring only grace and love to do so, and during his or her lifetime by encouraging all Americans to serve their neighbors and their communities. And whereas Dr. King's message of moving forward included dignity, discipline, and nonviolence as the way forward, that we cannot walk alone in this walk to justice, and we cannot turn back. And whereas the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service has been recognized by Congress since 1994, and throughout the United States, communities have come together to do acts of service. Now, therefore, I, Barbara Volk, Mayor of the City of Hendersonville, North Carolina, in honor and recognition of the contributions of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to the advancement of equality in our country, proclaim January 16th, 2023, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service, and urge our citizens to honor this day with giving back to their communities and remembering that MLK Day of Service empowers everyone with engaging people from all walks of life and strengthens our diverse city of Hendersonville, North Carolina. So we're gonna fake it. We're gonna pretend this is the real certificate. Hold this for me. All right. Thank you. And our second proclamation is National Blood Donor Month. Mercy? As many of you as want to come forward, come forward. Okay. So this, as I say, will get you the official one. But this is what it says. Whereas since 1969, January has been recognized as National Blood Donor Month to bring awareness to the importance of routine blood donations. And whereas National Blood Donor Month is a national effort to encourage the eligible blood donor population to donate blood every 56 days. And whereas there is no replacement for blood, and it must be donated on one's own accord. And whereas the Blood Connection is the primary blood provider of blood products to local hospitals and ensures this community has a safe and adequate blood supply. And whereas the responsibility of maintaining that safe and adequate blood supply also falls on each member of this community that is eligible to donate blood. And whereas one blood donation can save up to 3 lives, costs nothing but your time, and can mean the difference between life or death for local hospital patients. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Barbara Volk, Mayor of the City of Hendersonville, do hereby proclaim January as National Blood Donor Month. And would you like to say something?
Yes, I would love to say something. Just a couple of minutes. So I'm with the Blood Connection. My name is Amy Holzclaw. It is National Blood Donor Month. Only 3% of the people that are eligible in the population to donate do donate. So I challenge each of you to go to thebloodconnection.org/donate. Look for a blood drive, either at the center or a mobile unit, and sign up to donate this month. We appreciate you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Now we have an update on caregivers of Mother Earth. Ellie Travis, come on forward.
I'm Ellie Trappis, and I live at 726 West St. John's Way, Hendersonville, North Carolina. And I was here in September when the City Council unanimously voted for Caregivers of Mother Earth to be the first city caregivers of Mother Earth. Since that time, I've had the opportunity to meet with John and Tom and a few other people and go back and forth with some questions. And Lindsay has been very helpful in putting together a proof of a road sign. And I'm here tonight to see if there's any questions or any other discussion that we need.
Are we voting on something? There's no voting. We'll work with Ellie on,
Okay.
we're working on the application and document. We've looked at it and are making sure everything's in line, and ultimately it's on the city attorney, and I will look at drafting that agreement so that it meets all of our statutes as it relates to what we have to meet, and make sure we're public purpose, and then you can use that going forward. So.
Sounds good. All right, thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Employee recognition. Mr. Conant.
So I'll ask Mr. Murr to come forward.
Okay.
Mayor and members of council, Jenny Floyd joined us in September as a budget management analyst. So she has been working with us for about 4 months now. And this item just recognizes her for her significant academic achievement. Last month, she finished Western Carolina University's Master of Public Affairs program. So thank you, Jenny, and we're glad to have you on board.
Thank you, Adam, and I'm very glad to be here. Congratulations.
And then,
And next, the EAN Leadership
Yes.
Academy participants.
so, and just finally, just a recognition for council in our continued effort to provide leadership training for our staff. We had several individuals, you'll see here, Allison Justice, Suzanne McCall, Cameron Womack, Carissa Justice, Paul Kaplan, Monica Howard, Brittany Watson, Jesse Ivins, Bethany Bedfield, Brandon Mundy, Luann Welter, Deborah Scholl, and Tyler Morrow all participated in our Employee Assistance Network Leadership Academy. So again, putting their own time and dedication to getting the leadership training. So just wanted to recognize those folks and thank them for giving up their personal time to do that. So thank you very much.
Good. We have one public hearing this evening. This is a zoning text amendment regarding the lighting ordinance. Who is going to be doing this?
So the chief is so excited to see me up here this evening, I know. He was so thrilled with my last presentation on lighting in February of '22. Can't believe it's been that long. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. We will be going through a proposed zoning text amendment on outdoor lighting standards for the city of Hendersonville. Before I even get started, I do want to note a number of thank yous, because this is a rather complex topic and one in which I've needed, and we as a department have needed, the help of a broad spectrum of folks. And so we were fortunate enough throughout the process to engage with a number of industry experts, some of whom are here this evening, but want to note Gary Steinberg and Debbie Bell, Debbie's here this evening, for all of their help in understanding lighting and the regulatory impacts of lighting. The team at Duke Energy, including Craig DeBruce, Dan Reynolds, Billy Lawson, and Matt Russo, for their broad willingness to review and make suggestions, explain in terms that I could understand, and all that good stuff. The business community for their active engagement in the process. The Chamber's Policy Committee has been involved, particularly Susan Frady, who has shepherded a good deal of those conversations and worked with Debbie to contribute significantly and meaningfully to this effort. And you can see that in the collaboration exhibit that's a part of the packet. Members of the Business Advisory Committee who tolerated multiple staff presentations on the topic, welcoming us back each time while providing candid feedback and asking revealing questions. The Planning Board for their efforts and engagement. Neil Brown, I think the Planning Board would agree, deserves special recognition for his role in championing the effort and for following up with staff about how we were progressing on those standards. Planning Board members broadly have held multiple discussions about lighting, dark sky lighting, and how best to approach this effort. And when I presented in February of last year, I noted that it would likely be difficult to get everyone singing Kumbaya on this particular set of standards. I was right. These groups are not necessarily singing together, but we do have a very engaged discussion about the standards coming to you today. I have to laugh. I got my daughter one of those Echoes, the little dots, and she's using it to call me right now, of course. It's for Christmas. Hi, Josie. We do have a very engaged discussion, and staff are very appreciative of the involvement in the process to date. So I just did want to note all of that and the folks that have been involved. I'll note right at the outset, there are two motions in your packet today. There is a zoning text amendment to the zoning ordinance, and then there is a amendment to the City Code of Ordinance, Chapter 46, for standards related to street lighting. So just as we move through this, I am going to talk about one, then the other. Both have been presented throughout the process to the various stakeholders and boards and committees as they are being presented to you today, but noting that there's kind of two pieces there. The ordinances being reviewed today do include technical clarifications, including some reformatting that I'll review as we move through the presentation. The majority of the clarifications were reviewed by the Planning Board, with a few being the result of a final review with the city attorney. And they are intended to clarify the applications of the standards as set up, but do not make changes to the core of the standards or to what the intent of the standards were as they were reviewed by the various committees and stakeholders so far. So we'll get into the meat. One of the things when we talked in February was just to sort of confirm what the intent of the ordinance was and what we were seeking to achieve with the adoption. And these intent or purpose statements reflect what we understood to be the case, which included minimizing adverse off-site impacts, curtailing light pollution, protecting the natural environment, and conserving energy to the degree possible. I know it's a little hard to see on here, but this is a night sky map. This arrow kind of points to where we are in Hendersonville. I grew up here, right up in the dark. I think this map's kind of interesting. I've stared at it for quite a while. Obviously, it reflects how our more rural areas are more darkly lit, and the more urban and developed areas of the community or of the country, the East Coast, are not so darkly or are not so dark. And I think that just noting that the economic activity often follows the light pollution or light impacts. All right. So general standards of applicability. This is the first section of the ordinance. It establishes that the standards herein apply to multifamily and non-residential uses and exempts single-family and two-family. It further establishes that the street and roadway lighting will be addressed under the city's code of ordinances rather than via zoning ordinance. And then it finally notes that new site lighting is subject to the standards unless exempted in the standards themselves. So moving into the standards themselves, over the course of review and discussion of the standards, it became clear that they really fell into two categories. One set of standards specific to fixtures, the lights themselves, and the second set specific to the site layout of lighting. So the first technical clarification was to reformat and define standards associated with fixtures versus standards that are associated with site layout. This first set are those associated with the fixtures, and you'll see on slides the highlights are a reflection of technical clarifications. So the clarification here is just a reference to the IES, which is the Illuminating Engineers Society's technical memo on what uplight zero is. The language previously was an uplight ratio of 0. The other two standards are, so that standard establishes that there's no light emitting above the 90-degree horizontal plane of a fixture being installed under the standards in this ordinance. The second is that no new floodlights would be permitted, and that replacement floodlights replacement area lighting would be shielded to prevent uplight and front, side, or backlight, depending on applications. You can sort of see some examples of what those would look like here. And then finally, that all wall pack lights shall be full cutoff and shielded. These standards were all included in the original ordinance that was proposed and came as a result of the interaction with our various partners in development of this. There are some exemptions for those first three. So exempted from those first three standards would be these features: flagpoles, sports facilities, temporary construction sites, correctional facilities, lighting used solely for signage, temporary lighting as needed under emergency conditions, just clarification that that's intended to be temporary. We had temporary seasonal lighting. The conversation with legal suggested that holiday was a more appropriate term. And then a number of questions throughout the process about architectural lighting and ornamental lighting for National Register district or individually listed properties and churches and church spires. So additional clarification that those would be exempted from those first three standards. So basically it allows for them to do uplighting for architectural and things like that. Lighting fixture standards continued. These two standards are related to the correlated color temperature, which is the graph on the right. Is the light warmer or cooler? It's been shown that cooler or warmer lights tend to be better for humans and the environment, closer to that red-orange color versus the cooler blue lights. And then the CRI is 70. That's the color rendering index. That's how well a light renders color. Note, the only technical clarification there is just identifying that that's referencing to fixtures. So those are the fixture standards, and those have been kind of in the mix from the outset. Site lighting standards. Lighting levels and placement shall be designed in accordance. The technical clarification here is just the reference to a specific standards collection that IES has. This standard collection consists of 5 standards. The first of which is lighting applications. This is the most pertinent. It refers to recommendations for retail lighting and various other applications. And then there are a series of additional standards: lighting measurement and testing, lighting practice, lighting science, and lighting roadway and parking facilities. So these collections are used by professional lighting engineers and others in the lighting fields to design and inform lighting installations. The next set of site standards, so that first set of the IES recommended standards applies to the design of lighting for a site. These are specific to how light interacts at property boundaries, which we have decided through this process to regulate. That specifically is the interaction between non-residential, residential multifamily use, and so non-residential and residential multifamily at the ground level of the property line. So the maximum light level using maintained lumens shall be no more than 0.5 foot candles at that property line. And the technical clarification is just that it is at the ground level of the property line that measurement would be taken. And then maximum light level 0.25 for multifamily residential to residential, again, at the ground level of the property line. Yes?
Can you go back one slide?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So on that measurement, that means that if I went to the edge of the property and held up my, whatever the meter is called, the light that meter reads would be the equivalent, if it were, for example, a foot, of a candle 1 foot away that was lit.
So we do have some clarification around that
Okay.
question to a degree. So let me get through
Sure,
that,
no
and then
problem.
we may want to revisit it.
You got it.
These are just some examples, and then this screen is not going to show these very well, but of environments with a particular foot candle being achieved. So you can see a 2 to 10 foot candle environment on the ground. They're pools of light, right? So the pool of light at the center may be 10 foot candles. At the edge, it may be down to 2. As you get into the darker areas, it's getting to that 1 and 0 or the equivalent. And then the 10 to 25 foot candle environments, you can see what those kind of look like, what they represent. So it's just intended to provide some context for what that looks like. Site lighting standards, the third property line, but this one isn't related to the property line, but the third standard, which establishes a maximum light level at a particular interface, is with the stream buffer. So this is a standard that says that non-residential, multifamily residential at a stream buffer at the ground level of the edge of the stream buffer is meeting a 0 foot candle standard. And then no light shall be installed within the stream buffer except as permitted under section 17-3-5, which is the stream buffer standards for what we allow to occur in the stream buffer otherwise, which includes things like greenways and utility and things of that nature, road crossings when perpendicular to the stream, that sort of thing. These are all some of the clarifying. So we had some questions during the process about the maintained lumens, some of what you asked, Jerry, too. So for the purposes of this section, maintained lumens shall mean L80 or 80% of initial lumens. That just establishes what we mean specifically by a maintained lumen. A maintained lumen is, initial lumen is like what the light produces out of the box. And then a maintained lumen is what the light will produce after a period of degradation of that light, whether it's dirt or just that the light shines less brightly over time. So that maintained lumen will mean 80% in these cases. And then sites with compliant lighting plans shall be deemed compliant with these standards when the fixtures are installed as shown on an approved lighting plan as to type, orientation, location, height, shielding, and rating of fixtures. So basically what that establishes is that we will assess whether a site is compliant based on looking at their site plan, which produces a foot candle map, and determining that they have built it as they said they would, and that it would produce that particular foot candle at the property line. And then The last one is a lighting plan is not required to take into account lighting sources external to the site. So that just clarifies that there may be other lighting sources that are contributing to lighting at a property edge, and that we are not assessing the lighting plans and requiring that they figure that out, that our assessment is of on the light that's being produced by the site in question. I don't know if that answers your question, but this was the slide I wanted to wait for before going. And we can return to it if you want to. I'll just continue.
At some point, I just want to know if I'm standing at the edge with my lightometer trying to read the lumens, does 1 foot candle mean it's the equivalent light of a candle that's 1 foot away? Or was it 2 candles, 3 candles, whatever? But in other words, if you put one candle 1 foot away, that's the equivalent of light that my meter is reading.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jerry. Yes, so a foot candle is the measurement of 1 candle at 1 foot on a 1 foot square area. So yes, I apologize.
So like 10-foot candle would mean there's 10 candles sitting there, and that's what it registers right here.
Right, exactly.
And I'm measuring it from the edge of the property.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Which means obviously the closer to the candle, the brighter it gets, but the measurement means if there were 1 or 10 or 50 candles 1 foot away, that's what the light registers.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. So we've gone through the 2 sets of standards, fixture standards and site lighting standards. So these are the standards that staff would apply in reviewing site plans, and that new development would be required to meet based on some following elements, right? So the 6-19 should be a dash for existing exterior lighting. This is the amortization date. This has been the most discussed component of the ordinance. This amortization is a tool that cities can use to require compliance with a newly adopted ordinance at a set future date. What we have included is the result of conversations that we had with council early on, a 10-year amortization date on or before 10 years from the effective date of this ordinance. All sites within the city would have to be in compliance with the standards that are set in the first 2, in the fixture. They would have to be in compliance with the fixture standards and the site layout standards.
Can I ask a question before you leave that slide?
Yep.
Can you tell me what's wrong with those 2 lights?
So the one is a floodlight, and we would not permit an unshielded floodlight.
And unshielded means?
That it is emitting without restriction light up and to the side.
The shielding part means up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the focus is, the focus is on the side, but the language in the standard does reference and to prevent front, side, and or backlighting depending on the implications on surrounding properties. So the idea there is that should a floodlight be adjacent to a residential property, that a side shield would also be included. But
Can you go back to that picture while we're talking about it?
Yeah.
So for the top one, that needs some shielding.
Yes,
Okay.
that would.
So if that had shielding, it would be, well, I guess if it had the right shielding, it would be compliant.
Yeah, and most of our floodlights in the city, or a lot of the floodlights in the city are Duke luminaires. They're Duke owned. They're leased by the property owners. In many cases, they'd be replacing with something more along these lines, right? So some sort of shielded or otherwise.
And those on the bottom there, that
fixtures.
is an example of a shielded light.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is like facing down. It doesn't want to go down. Sorry.
Sorry, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So it's shielded from the back.
Okay, so that shield there prevents it from, I guess, shining off
Backlight.
into some property the other direction.
Yep.
The other picture, the one on the side of the building,
So that's a wall pack. It's not considered, wouldn't be considered a full cutoff. So full cutoff wall packs would be just facing down.
So in other words, the problem with that light is that it needs something around it, so it only,
Yeah,
so, because it's glaring out and down.
yeah.
Okay.
So this is in a sense, amortization is in a sense a non-conforming standard in the sense that at 10 years, everything would have to come into conformity. The other non-conforming standards are held in 6-2-5. The standards here are when repairing or replacing 50% or more of total existing exterior lighting fixtures on a site within any 12-month period. So if you repair or replace 50% of a parking lot lighting, you would need to bring the entire site into compliance with the standards. Provided, however, any replacement of a floodlight shall be required to meet the standards of 6-19-2. So in 6-19, we say no new floodlights unless they're shielded. This just is a reiteration of that. B is in relation to a request to, so the previous term said when expanding or altering 50% or more of an existing parking or lighting area, and there were concerns that altering was not clear as to what that meant. And so talking with the city attorney, she suggested improving as the term. So when expanding or improving 50% more of an existing parking or lighted area. And then we included a number of example activities that would trigger and those that wouldn't, just to further sort of explain what the intent there was. And then the third non-conforming standard would be when structures on a site with non-conforming lighting are renovated. So when the structure is renovated and that renovation exceeds 50% of the assessed value, that would also trigger compliance.
And letter C does not mean you don't have to be renovating the parking lot. It means the actual building itself.
Yeah.
Right.
So that one comes from, that's a trigger for our
Building code.
parking lot landscaping requirements. Mm-hmm. So it mirrors what our requirement is elsewhere. So those are our non-conforming standards. So these would be in the intervening 10-year period. If amortization was adopted, these would be the triggers for a site to come into compliance with the standards. Otherwise, they'd be a legally existing non-conforming site. Contents of the final site plan. This is just establishing what the lighting plan needs to include when submitted. And there's some technical clarifications just to align what's requested here with how we will determine whether or not a site is compliant. So the type of the fixture, orientation, location, height, shielding, and rating. There will be a foot candle map included too, but we, based on the earlier, are not using the foot candle map then to enforce whether or not they're compliant. A series of definitions of terms. We've added maintained lumens and the Illuminating Engineering Society, just so those are known terms. One of the, I know this is impossible to read, but I put it up there because it does reflect work that we have done to date. This is an Excel sheet that's an inventory of existing, what I would call sort of fee simple owned lighting. So lighting of city-owned facilities and structures. And there's a total of 488 lights that we, accounted for or reviewed and identified on city property throughout the city. And it shows which are in red, non-compliant, and which would require replacement. The orange are lights that would potentially be exempt or could be replaced to meet the full standards of the code. And then the green are lighting where we have already done what the standards require. So one of the first groups is the floodlights. And you can see this number. So we did our counts kind of going around the city and figuring out where we had floodlights. And then we asked Duke, hey, Duke, where do we have floodlights that we're leasing from you? And they provided us this information. So we have 91 floodlights that we lease from Duke. And you can see a number associated with the unit cost. I did ask Duke about what that was. The 101 is the replacement cost. There'll be a new lease or maintenance contract with the city when these get replaced or as they are replaced. But that is a one-time replacement unit cost. So you can see what it would take us to move our existing floodlights to compliance with the standards of the code. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about enforcement triggers and impacts, to sort of talk about how the private sector and public sector, and this is at a very high level, and I know that members of the private sector will provide additional color to this, but nobody probably else is going to talk about what the public sector impacts would be, so although perhaps they will. But as it relates to new development, you know, what we adopt a new lighting standards ordinance, what does that mean? New non-residential and multifamily residential, which trigger site plan review, would be required to submit a lighting plan, and projects which do not trigger site plan review would work with staff to confirm compliance with the standards. Public sector impacts, this would be integrated into our plan review process. So for sites which are required to submit a plan review, we'd be reviewing a site plan that included a lighting plan. So there'd be some additional review time and some training to build familiarity with lighting plans, which certainly just in the process of doing this, we've begun. For redevelopment and replacement, these would be projects that trigger because of triggering the non-conforming standards. The process basically is the same once non-conformance is triggered, in the sense that for existing non-residential and multifamily, if they're required to do a site plan, we're reviewing that and requiring it, and then if they are not required to do a site plan, then we're addressing compliance otherwise. And then, so similar public sector impacts too. The last one would be the amortization. At the end of the amortization date, staff would have to identify properties with non-compliant lighting using various tools and strategies, and then property owners would be required to come into compliance. This would impact all non-residential and multifamily residential, and would result in either replacement of non-compliant lighting or, and most likely, or request for a variance from the ordinance in relation to a hardship in meeting the standards. So those are things that would go to the Board of Adjustment for review. In terms of the public sector impacts, this is not insignificant. You'd have a multi-year enforcement action identifying non-compliant properties and conveying compliance steps required. We'd have to identify non-compliant fixtures, and we also then have to identify non-compliant sites. So that is the zoning ordinance side of it. So all of what we've talked about to this point is the zoning text amendment. And the next set of slides relate to the Chapter 46, streets, sidewalks, and public places. These standards apply to lighting in the public roadway or highway and sidewalk, public street and sidewalk lighting, and to public ornamental and sidewalk lighting. A couple of clarifications there are just, that it is public for each case, and it does include the sidewalk. These were conversations with city attorney, and technical clarification that the top of a decorative ornamental street light would be capped or opaque, while the sides shall be translucent. So this will have an impact on us, and it is one that hadn't previously talked about in terms of expense. It happens to be the more expensive one, but we have 39 black pole streetlights that aren't otherwise planned for replacement, that to meet this standard would have to be replaced with the green pole decorative ornamentals, and those cost about $3,500 each. So that is a bigger number to replace those and bring that into compliance. It'd be about $136,000 to bring those into compliance.
Question?
Yes.
Are you talking about the poles on Main Street?
So the poles on Main Street would meet this standard, that they are capped. The poles that we have that have, if they're on 7th, and they're also in the City Hall parking lot and in the Apple parking lot, they're the older black poles, and they just have a open globe on them. They don't have they're not capped at all. It's just literally just one big bulb on the top. So those wouldn't meet this standard. And so there's a total of 49 of those. 10 of them will be replaced as a component of the 7th Avenue Streetscape project, but there's an additional that won't be and would have to be replaced out otherwise, which aren't planned for replacement currently.
So this would require us to replace them?
Yes, it would.
Thank you.
Applicability, some additional technical clarifications. The provision of the article shall apply to all public streets and sidewalks except where preempted by federal, state, or other superseding jurisdictions. So that just takes care of NCDOT. But what this means is that city streets would be subject to the ordinance, and if the state had other standards that exceeded these or otherwise were different than what we have, that those would apply on their roadways. And then light shielding and distribution. This establishes that all street lighting shall have no light emitted above 90 degrees with the following exception. Ornamental street lighting shall be permitted on all public streets and sidewalks. And that technical clarification, we had said specific districts in talking with the city attorney that was too broad and subjective. And so just applying it to all public streets, permitting it on all public streets and sidewalks, and then deciding where we want to put them is the way to write the ordinance.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How does this part work with what you just showed us about ornamental lighting?
So basically it says that ornamental lighting does not have to meet the no light above 90 degrees. So I'll go to this next slide. There are, 1,600 streetlights in the city that we lease through Duke. Those all have to meet the 90-degree cutoff. The ornamental streetlights we have don't have to meet the 90-degree cutoff. They just have to be capped. This is the count of our current streetlights. So the in red are what we would have to replace to meet the standard, and the associated charge, which, like the 101, is a one-time cost.
Can I ask you a question, Lynn?
Yep.
Can those lights be made to meet the 90-degree?
The ornamentals?
Yes.
So I did a Google search to understand what fixture we had. The specific fixture type we have has a U2 rating, which means that it does have some sort of uplight impact. It's not 0. I don't know whether or not they could be retrofitted to meet a 0 standard.
So, okay, so this is the part here of where our lights would be not be like other lights, the ornamental lights would not be like other lights because they would potentially be violating the 90-degree rule.
That's right. Yeah, they would not be meeting the U0 standard.
And this is one that we don't know if technologically what we want exists, at least at the current time.
I can only imagine that there are ornamental lights that have U0 ratings. The style that we have does not have that. And so it would be additional research to understand what that would be. Although I can only imagine that they would be comparable in price to the replacement for the black pole to green pole. So you look at 3,500 is probably a safe guess. I think we have about 200 and we have over 200 ornamental lights.
Okay, and so and you have to replace the entire thing. You can't just replace the top.
Well, I don't know that.
Okay.
I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
This would bring all of our other street lights into compliance with the standard. So, and the 36 is a one-time fee. This ordinance in its original format, minus the technical clarifications that I've highlighted and minus some formatting changes, but as the standards are presented today, those were presented to a variety of groups, including the Planning Board's Legislative Committee, which included some members of the original Lighting Committee. We talked about the text amendment, and they were supportive of the simplified version. Of course, you remember the original version was the MLO, much more involved. We also took this back to the Business Advisory Council on December 5th, and there were 7 members in attendance, in addition to staff and a number of folks who attended the meeting, not as members of the committee. We reviewed in a very similar fashion to what I've done today, the proposed text amendment. The general feedback was a questioning of the need for the lighting ordinance, concerns about it being an undue burden on the business community, and limits around lighting for businesses and concerns in creating safety issues. At the end of the meeting, in making a motion to, and there was a variety of discussion around those. At the end of and you can see some of the other concerns there. At the end of the meeting, they made a motion to specifically recommend that the half-a-foot candle at the property lines between non-residential to multifamily and residential be raised to 1-foot candle, to eliminate or expand the amortization date, with the minimum expansion being 15 years, and to clarify the word altering. We've not had the chance to return on item 3, but we did make an effort to do that because we didn't think that the intent was what was generating the concern around altering, but I'm sure they'll have comments that they can contribute on that. But those were the sort of recommendations that came out of that. So for the zoning text amendment, try to move through this as efficiently as I can, but because it is a zoning ordinance amendment, it does require a comprehensive plan consistency statement. The land use and development chapter includes a number of urban design standards, strong support among Hendersonville citizens for green building and site development practices that maximize energy and water efficiency and respect natural features on a site. Strategy LU 3.5, minimize negative impacts from growth and land use changes on existing land uses. LU 3.5.1, consider a full range of short and long-term impacts when reviewing zoning code application changes, and update the zoning code as needed to ensure conformance with the comp plan. Population and housing had no relevant goals or strategies. Natural environment strategy, NR 1.2, protect land adjacent to streams in order to protect water quality, reduce erosion, and protect wildlife habitat. continue to enforce and improve upon the city stream buffer protection standards, additional guidelines and provisions for low-impact building and site design, and encourage protection of streams and wetlands and land adjacent to them. The remaining chapters of the comprehensive plan had no additional relevant goals or strategies. For general rezoning standards, compatibility, in this case, the proposed text amendment allows for the sufficient and safe lighting of sites while reducing negative impacts on existing development. Changed conditions, which is the third category. Light pollution is a growing issue as recognized internationally and in the country, and has gained more and more attention. Advancements have been made in the lighting industry to address light pollution. Public interest, the text amendment addresses public concerns by reducing off-site impacts and mitigating negative impacts of new development and new lighting. Public facilities, we've talked about lighting on city-owned public facilities and in the right-of-way, and talked about potential impacts to those as a result of the adoption of the ordinance. And 6 criteria is effect on the natural environment. Artificial light has been studied and documented to have negative impacts on flora and fauna, and the proposed text amendment aims to protect our stream buffer areas, which represent one of our richer ecological environments within the city. So planning board, so BAC December 5th, and then it went to planning board for discussion and review on December 12th. Matt Manley graciously gave the presentation to the planning board. We had 7 members in attendance plus staff and visitors, including in that presentation was the feedback from the BAC. There was a good bit of discussion. The planning board considered this item for just over 2 hours, and general feedback included concern about the amortization, concerns around exemption, support of requested clarifications, which are the things that we've gone over today for the most part, discussion of process to date and concessions made over the course of the review. The board did eventually vote 4-3 to recommend approval as presented. Those in opposition had somewhat varying degrees of opposition, but the key points were the amortization and some of the other issues that were raised by the BAC. So it comes to you with a 4-3 recommendation to approve. The planning board adopted the following consistency statement, that the petition aligns with the comp plan's goals to minimize negative impacts on growth and to protect wildlife. Minimize the negative impacts of growth and to protect wildlife habitat. They adopted the following rationale for approval. I won't read those to you. Those are in your motion. We do also have draft rationale for denial, and that I am done. Sorry.
Any
A
further
lot in there.
questions?
Lou, I have a question. Exactly how many businesses will this affect?
So in the immediate adoption, it will make a broad variety of sites and fixtures within the city non-conforming. They are legally established non-conforming and will be allowed to continue as such until they trigger a non-conforming standard, which is they replace a floodlight or they hit one of those thresholds, the 50%, one of those. That is the answer for the next 10 years. If there is an adoption of an amortization, then at that point it would impact everyone that hadn't in some way or another come into compliance with the code by that time. So the sort of second level of that question is how many of these sites in the city are currently compliant with the lighting ordinance. I don't have anything but an educated guess as to what that is. My educated guess, and perhaps others could contribute to this, would be that, basically none of the floodlights would be compliant. So if there's a floodlight on a small business site, that would not be compliant with the standards here. If their site was designed and built with lighting prior to 5 or so years ago, it's unlikely that they would meet the IES standards adopted today, but it's not impossible. So, I think it's north of 80% would have non-conforming features on their site.
Thanks.
What is the benefit of side light? Is there a benefit to side light?
So light is, so the intent here, we're not necessarily regulating side light unless there is a use adjacent that would be negatively impacted by that, right? So one of the things in the MLO that was a component of that ordinance that's not a component of what we have today was an effort to literally keep all of the light of any site on that site. So no matter what was next door, you were stopping zero at the property line. And so some of the questions that were raised or concerns that were raised during that time frame was, well, when you have commercial next to commercial, I don't mind if there is light from a fixture on the adjacent commercial property that also lights my site because I'm also a commercial property, right? So, to answer that question, I think, the benefit of side light is that if you're not requiring all light to stay on a particular site, it can light multiple commercial locations, right? Just creates more light in the environment. The uplight is really preventing the sky glow, and that's where the dark sky piece comes from. So if you're stopping the uplight, then light to the side, unless it's negatively impacting an adjacent user, is not necessarily, as this ordinance establishes it, a negative impact.
So I think I read in a news article or something, is it Spartanburg or Greenville, or there were issues with the side light, and then the sidewalks became so dark that folks that were, on the side, like walking on the sidewalks, were having trouble. And then also, like, just another big concern of mine is safety, because there's a gym in town that I work out at, and the parking lot is extremely dark at night. And for someone who is visually impaired, plus like a female leaving places, I feel like it's just, like in commercial places, I want to feel safe and I want things to be very well lit. I had a conversation with my daughter about, I said, okay, this is Naggy Mom, and you don't have your license yet, maybe not for 4 years, but, when you do get your license and you're parking in a parking lot, always go to the most well-lit area, and there are not a lot of well-lit areas in some of the parking lots. And so I know that I've heard complaints from residents that their cars have been broken into in Ingles parking lot, Planet Fitness's parking lots, like many cars, and there weren't good lights, and so would that have detoured somebody from breaking into their car if there was adequate light around? And I understand the uplighting component and not wanting to do that, but the broad spectrum of light in a commercial lot, especially a lot that is open in the nighttime, is, that's like one of my biggest concerns. And then do we require people to have safe parking lots? Like, we're talking about less light, but do we say, well, you really should have no unlit area of your parking lot as long as it's facing down, because that's the way that we can ensure that people can be the safest. So that's just kind of one of my biggest fears. And I feel like I'm echoing. Am I echoing? Okay. It's just my ears.
You mean like the sound?
I don't know, maybe my ears are closed. Turn my microphone off. Okay.
Would the
provisions that you put in there regarding sidewalk lighting solve the problem that she was talking about, that perhaps these other communities who have passed a lighting ordinance and put special provisions in there for sidewalks?
So Duke did raise that question with us. They've reviewed what you are reviewing today, because they have run into issues in other communities where the community was requiring limitations on backlighting for streetlights, which we are not, that then negatively impacted their ability to light sidewalks. So their feedback to us as it related to that was the, full cutoff, the 90, nothing above the 90-degree horizontal was good, and they could meet that and still safely light sidewalks, but not to include any kind of backlight prevention, because that allows them, to still light both the street and the sidewalk with the fixtures that they have. So I do know too that the IES standards do have standards for uniformity of light. So there's, the pros can answer this question much better than I can, but the historical lighting approaches perhaps were a little more focused on one really big bright light, which means you have really bright spots, but then you also have really dark spots. And IES and a lot of those standards in terms of quality of lighting have moved more towards uniformity of lighting, which means that you don't have one really bright spot and then a bunch of dark spots, but that you're creating a more consistent level of light across the lot, or whatever application you're lighting. Gary and Debbie can probably answer that question better than I can.
I think you're doing a great job.
Wow.
You probably know more about lighting than you ever would do.
I hope not.
I have two other questions. The initial chart you showed of all of the city's lights, and then the subsequent numbers
Right.
you gave us, they were included in that.
The streetlights weren't.
Okay.
So and I would be the first one to say that, our count of lights, we went around to the buildings and we're like, Matt did this, to his credit. There's a light. If it's wrong, it's his fault. No. We did our best to determine where we had lights. When we asked Duke, it looked like their count of the floodlights we owned was higher than the one we'd come up with. But it's a best guess assessment of the lighting that we have on our buildings. So theoretically, the floodlights were included in that number, but our street lights were not.
Okay, and it looked like you had listed 20,000 to bring our lights into compliance, but that would include everything but these 39 streetlights.
That's right, yeah.
Okay,
That-
and they technically wouldn't be in compliance because they're not
Capped.
capped.
Right. So I don't know if you can, I should have an image, I apologize, but when you're driving down 7th Avenue or you're pulling into the City Hall parking lot, those lights are on black poles and they're literally just a big globe. And then the ones that we have installed since then are the green ones with the green cap.
Okay.
Oh, Tom may have some information on retrofitting our green lights.
Yeah, the price that I gave you, $3,500, was for the light fixture and the post. So I feel pretty confident that we could probably just replace the top fixture and not have to replace the post.
Please.
On those fixtures, if we can't find some type of shield to go in the top of it.
That's for the green ones, not for the black ones.
That's the black ones,
That's the black ones, okay.
yeah.
That would be better.
How many were there?
There's 39 that we're not replacing with the streetscape, I think.
So I think the light fixture, just the fixture itself, is about $2,000, $2,100 a piece.
Don't make
Yeah, me either.
Somewhere in here, there was a number of 200 lights thrown out.
That's if you had to replace the green ones and the black ones.
So it'd be
Right.
82,000 if it was 2,100.
So we've just potentially decrease the price from 3,500 to 2,100, just to fix the top.
And this is all swag,
This is all-
though, right?
yeah, it
All-
is.
I want to clarify,
yeah.
this
It's
is,
all back of the napkin.
it's
Adam
back
said
of the
he's got
napkin,
plenty of
don't,
money to pay for it, too.
Either way, it sounds better than 136,000.
I mean, it's still,
It's still a good chunk of money,
Yeah.
but it's better.
I have a question about the sidewalk lighting that you mentioned, that Councilmember Hensley mentioned, and that is, I'm just trying to think about places in Hendersonville where streetlights are not over the sidewalk, or like right beside the sidewalk. That's what I'm trying to get an idea of what we're talking about, where a backlit, there's a streetlight that's not very close to a sidewalk.
if I can help,
Please.
I think what Councilmember Hensley was saying, and I think Ms. Bell could probably refer to this, I think she brought this up very early on, is that some of our neighbors to the south of us had established a lighting ordinance so restrictive it didn't allow backlighting at all. And when they went in and eliminated the backlighting from streetlights, which are basically overhanging the street, they eliminated the backlighting, it made the sidewalk dark.
Because it wasn't directly over the sidewalk.
Yeah, because most of our street lights are over the street, but because we don't eliminate backlighting, they get lighting onto the sidewalk.
Okay, I think I understand what you mean now, okay.
Additional questions for me
Anything
at this time?
else? Questions?
I am available, as you might imagine.
Okay, well, we may have some more as we go
Okay,
along.
sounds good.
All right. Okay. If you have nothing else from council at the moment, this is a public hearing. Madam Clerk, has this public hearing been advertised in accordance with general statutes?
Yes, Mayor, it has.
Okay, so we will open this public hearing. And about how many people want to comment? I can get a little feel for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How about anyone online? Can you see anything there?
Madam Mayor, 2 online have their hand raised.
2? Okay. We've already had a fairly long discussion, so I'd ask each of you absolute maximum of 5 minutes and preferably 3. And just in whatever order you want to come up, if you can just give your name and address for the clerk's record, would appreciate it. Who wants to start? Okay.
Okay, we're drawing straws here. Lou, could I ask you a quick question first? The presentation that Matt had given to the planning board showed what we had written in yellow and what you had written in green. Did they get that? Okay, I just wanted to be sure of that. Okay. So, my name is Susan Frady, and I live at 330 Hart Road in Pisgah Forest, and this is Debbie Bell, and she lives on Crab Creek Road in Hendersonville, and she is a retired lighting engineer. I'm the executive director of PEP. And as I think was in your packet, together we wrote the portion of the lighting ordinance that was shown in yellow in the presentation. We wrote this ordinance with the intention of the businesses compromising with the city to adopt a simple ordinance that everyone could read and understand, and that would address concerns of the city about light pollution while allowing businesses to comply as they made changes to or expanded their businesses. I'm going to talk about the ordinance itself and let Debbie Bell, who is the lighting professional, that's not me, talk about the technical issues. Just a little bit of background. Prior to beginning our work on the ordinance, we sent a survey out to all PEP members to determine the types of lighting that were being used in the city. The survey showed 75% of the lighting was being provided by a third party, Duke Energy. We reviewed ordinances from Brevard, Hilton Head, South Carolina, and Greenville, South Carolina, to get an idea of what regulations other cities that were somewhat similar to Hendersonville had adopted. We then went out on a dreary, foggy night in February with a light meter and conducted a lighting survey. We looked at different uses such as the Gray Hosiery Apartments, GBS Lumber, City Operations Center, Triangle Stop, St. James Church, Norm's Minute Mart and Car Wash, Habitat for Humanity, the Hendersonville Police Department, and Main Street, as well as others. As we worked on this ordinance, the primary issues that we focused on were: number one, safety; 2, control of site light trespass and uplight; 3, provide amicable lighting in residential and commercial locations; 4, ease of approval process and enforcement. We met with PEP members, the Chamber, Duke Energy officials, city staff, the Business Advisory Committee, the Planning Board Subcommittee, the Planning Board, and many of you about these issues. We then began drafting the ordinance that included a CCT limit of 4,000 K, a prohibition on floodlights, wall packs shall be full cut off and shielded in a maximum light level using maintained lumens, shall be no more than 1 foot candle for non-residential to commercial use interface. The 1 foot candle was subsequently changed to 0.5 by staff. And I'll let Debbie Bell talk a little bit about the difference in these two because I think it's going to be amazing. Staff also added a section that regulates lighting within the stream buffer with no exemption for existing uses that are present and ongoing. Section 17-4 of the current zoning ordinance outlines exemptions for existing uses that include agriculture, buildings, and industrial facilities. We believe that existing lighting should be added to this exemption. We outlined in section 6-2-5 compliance standards when expansions, renovations, or repairs are made to 50% or more of the total existing lighting area. This is the same language that is used in the existing ordinance for other nonconformities. Staff added a requirement in section 6-9-13 for an amortization on non-compliant lighting of 10 years. We feel that this amortization would be a burden on small businesses at a time when small businesses are struggling to stay in business, and also on affordable multifamily residential developments. I'm going to put on my other hat for housing assistance, and housing assistance owns 10 affordable multifamily properties within the city that would have to be brought into compliance. I have no idea where that money would come from. Possibly we could apply for variances on each one to the Board of Adjustment for a hardship. We're also very concerned about enforcement of the amortization. Enforcement will be very difficult and will likely lead to the addition of more staff. How will this be paid for? By an additional fee to businesses or additional taxes to the taxpayers? Prior to adopting an ordinance that includes any amortization, we need to weigh the benefits and the unintentional consequences. Additionally, we are very concerned that ornamental street lighting is exempted from the street lighting standards proposed to be adopted in section 46 of the city code, and the ornamental and architectural lighting of public buildings. And we think it's only the ornamental and architectural lighting, but we're not sure exactly what the public building exemption is. We feel that having different standards for businesses and city lighting is not acceptable. We would ask, if you adopt an ordinance tonight, that you go with the recommendation of the Business Advisory Committee with no amortization, 1 foot candle for non-residential to residential interface, and that you add an exemption for existing lighting in the stream buffer. Thank you, and I would like to now have Debbie Bell discuss some of the technical issues. Thank you.
Hi. Good evening. Good to see you again. 18 months ago, when Mr. Waddell and Mr. Gordon asked me to speak with the Business Advisory Committee, I shared with them that the largest and most significant impediment to introducing the MLO in municipals was enforcement. And today, ironically, that's the impetus for me being here with you. Over this also 18 months, I've had the opportunity to meet, to get to know both Mr. Holloway and Mr. Manley. And let me assure you, these are wonderful public servants willing to provide you with as best a ordinance they can to the council. So they can be commended. But it's also my concern that they're going to be the enforcers of this. So I wanted to share with you today, if I might. I think this young lady's got me in charge here, right? First thing I did was some homework, like any good researcher would do. I actually found a couple of documents that reflected where your lighting wants were. We didn't have a lot of, it was just the MLO, we don't know what we want, but here we want a lighting ordinance. So I tried to figure out what does the city want, where are you headed? So in your 2014 comprehensive parking study, there were a couple of incidences on page 25 and again on page 40 where specifically poor lighting was remarked about off of do not have adequate lighting on Church, King Streets, and avenues, especially the 200 blocks. And then in the summary, they basically said we must install safer and brighter walkways along with improved lighting and markings within the parking lots. So that was number one. Number two was I've noticed as I've had the opportunity to come to many of your different meetings, the 2030 comprehensive plan is also very important to you. So I pulled that up and I noticed that in there, one of your goals is to provide the city and the folks therein with safety. And you are a SEPTED city. I remarked on that 18 months ago too, crime prevention through environmental design. You are to be commended for that because you care that people are safe coming into your city, and I appreciate you for that for you. The problem that I have with that is it's in direct conflict with what we put in our criteria. A lot of the SEPTED requirements are driven by vertical light. We're viewing each other right now in a vertical manner, aren't we? The light levels we're asking about are taken at a horizontal level, so they don't take into consideration facial recognition. I had a lot of questions from the Business Advisory Committee as well as the Chamber about what does 1 foot candle look like. Councilman Smith, I provided you with a demonstration here. 7 foot candles on the far left. Center is 1 foot candle. To its immediate right is half a foot candle. Let's see if I get this right. Here we go. Now, there are two people in this picture. You can see the silhouette of the person standing at 5 foot candles, correct? You cannot see the person standing at a half a foot candle. So I asked her to turn on a flashlight. So the problem that I had with this, whether it's 1 foot candle or a half a foot candle, I couldn't tell there was a person standing there. So once again, we go back to the SEPTED requirement that I remarked to you about earlier. That's a concern. Councilman Smith, to address yours, I actually pulled the IES charts. These are directly from the Street Dreams product that you use within your city. It's a wonderful fixture. I had the opportunity to work on it when I was at GE. Did want to share with you that in concurrence with Mr. Holloway, it is a U2 design. You asked the question, how do we make it compliant? Anytime you put something under a light fixture, the opportunity to reflect is always there. The best way to allow a type of fixture like that to not have to have a U of 0, you have to shepherd's hook mount it. You guys know what a shepherd's hook is, right? So now it's basically a pendant light. There's no pole underneath it. So that's the way to do it. Secondly, the other way to do it is to place a hat brim, similar to when you have a bowler hat, the rim. And what we found with those, when I actually tried to do some of this compliance for the city of Greenville, and it ends up taking on a hat brim roughly about 6 to 8 inches outside from the brim of it. So we'd have to come in and put hat brims on all of those to make them compliant. The issue that I had with this is that we're allowing the city to use it, but if I have a property owner, business property owner, residential property owner, whatever it is, that wants to come in and use the same fixture, they're prohibited under this ordinance to use it because only the street lighting and these are allowed. So that's a difficult decision.
Also, question.
Yes, sir.
So you're saying that a hat that goes out 6 to 8 inches around that would make that compliant?
Could make it compliant. They'd have to run some tests on it, but it would take a significant hat to make that happen.
Right.
The one that I had done previously went out about 16 inches.
From one side.
And then all of a sudden, my public works director is going to be very unhappy because the wind loading goes up significantly on it then. So that answer your question, okay?
Yes.
Thank you for that. And then we looked at church properties, and was interested to see that church properties have been excluded from it. What I did want to share with you on the top is St. James Church. I'm actually standing in the Triangle Stop parking lot, one that's overlit, or it was deemed overlit. And what you'll see, the orange glow from the high-pressure sodium floodlight at St. James is actually bleeding backward into the property behind it, not the light from the gas station leaking over into it. So St. James, of course, as well, we have about 20 churches in the city. They'll be required to come in and change all those out. First Baptist Church, bottom right-hand corner, I was interested to see spires taken out of it. That's great because we've got a lot of floodlights on spires around town. You notice the ornamental wall packs on the side? Those have to come down. You'll see a lot of those in the multifamily, the sconces on the side of the doorways, those will all have to come down in order to be compliant with the wall pack issue. There's also a residential within the city transition. You have residential lofts above many of the commercial businesses below. The bottom left corner was actually taken from a flyer to sell that apartment there. And you can see that the lighting on the far right actually shines into that apartment. So how do you mediate that? Then also, this is what we said, the public buildings. The Welcome Center is lit by floods right now. Your maintenance yard, literally across the street, is lit with floods. And the police department also has the non-conforming lights on it. So if you go with public properties being exempt, would that also now exempt the county-owned, city-located properties? That's something that I think we probably need to address before. And lastly, in closing, I was concerned that the enforcement again, that for properties under 5,000 square feet right now, they don't have to submit a lighting plan. Under this new ordinance, they must. Most of the time, they'll just call Duke and say, come put a light fixture up. Duke comes and sticks a flood on the utility pole across the street from it, and ta-da, we're done. Now they have to actually go to either a utility, Duke Energy, or to Current Lighting out in Flat Rock, East Flat Rock, to get that done. Now, the other thing is, the Duke Energy did provide with you an up and down charge. They are subject to the Public Utilities Commission, therefore their rates are pre-established by the PUC. What I did not see in those costs were what would your new rate on the LED fixture be? You still have 58 mercury vapor fixtures on your system. 2008, the Clean Energy Act took away the ballast system, the energy system from that, yet you still have 58 of them in your city. So what would be to transition from an obsolete product to a new LED product? What's that new rate? So that's something I wanted you to think about too. And then also there was a discussion about drones being able to, in the future, 10 years from now. 10 years ago, LEDs were still not at the tipping point. We were still very much in the high intensity discharge lamps. So 10 years from now, what's it going to be like? So tunable color LEDs. There's a big shift on from the environmental side to push it to cooler temperatures. We're at 4,000. They're wanting 3,000 and 2,500. So would tunable LEDs be available? Integrated and wireless controls. Most of the drivers now come with a 24-volt component on them, which will allow them to go into telemetry so that you can do wireless control, much like the meters, the power meters that we have right now. Adaptive lighting, meaning that during high traffic, pedestrian traffic, you can raise the lights. Low traffic, you reduce them, requires some sort of dimming. And of course, the robotic drone that we heard about, I think Mr. Holloway, someone had mentioned that to him. So I actually did a little research. Honestly, in Budapest in June of this last year, there was a little project put together. I'll be glad to share this with council. 13 pages, but what I wanted to share with you, it was taken in a secluded area. What causes the problem, this here is a device that I saw in 2008 in Alaska, Anchorage, Alaska. It actually drives underneath the fixtures and takes color rendering requirements, CCT, it takes light lever measurements. It actually responds to the driver. That's very sophisticated. These type of devices do not exclude spill light, stray light, and those kind of things. So how would you be able to do those field measurements? Even drones aren't able to do that at this point. So that could be a problem in the future for you to do your assessments later on to make those compliant. So, and the last slide, I think I've got it. Yep, there it is. You mentioned the 5 books. That's true. IS, they're an academic group, and there are many, many, within those 5 books, there are many, many standards with many, many pages that are required to evaluate which application it is. So I did just want to share that with you. So that's what I had. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, anyone have any questions?
I have a question of Lou.
Okay.
The slide that she put up with the buildings, they're not exempted, correct? It's only ornamental lighting we're discussing. City buildings are not exempted from this.
The code exempts them from the first 3 standards related to the floodlights.
So the city buildings don't have to change their floodlights? I thought you just said we did.
Well, We would have to change our floodlights over time, but for the specific applications of architectural lighting and ornamental architectural lighting, you would not. So think of.
So in other words, city buildings like the ones you had on the slide.
That's right.
Would not have to ever change their lighting.
For architectural and ornamental lighting. So think of like a
How about the
fixture
building?
on the.
Okay, go ahead.
Like a fixture on the exterior of the building that's historic.
Outside this building.
It doesn't meet the zero uplight. You would not have to change that.
Well, let's say this building.
It would have to be an architectural or ornamental light on the building itself, but yes. The answer to your question is, can you have a, let's see, let me think of an example. Like the county will do they'll put a color on their floodlights and make the courthouse building purple for a month or whatever. They would not have to remove those floodlights. They'd still be able to do that under this ordinance as written.
But that's, okay, that's the old courthouse I think you're referring to.
Yeah, so.
Operation Center, the lights around this building, would they have to be changed?
No, they're exempted from.
Okay.
The ornamental and architectural lighting on the building is exempted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If we could kind of get the time down a little bit, I allowed a little extra for the first couple, but
In the interest of time, I'll try to
appreciate
be
it.
brief for sure. I'm Bill McKibben, and here with the Chamber of Commerce. And we oversee a lot of different committees in the Chamber. I'm currently heading up the Public Policy Committee. And really the goals of the Chamber, as everyone knows, is to support existing business and try to make the business environment friendly for new businesses. So our public policy is looking at infrastructure. We're always looking for any changes that might happen in roads, water, sewer, those type of things. And ordinances come into that same arena. So our goals, we've worked with a lot of different folks, and again, I want to thank the collaboration that we've had with the business advisory, with staff from the city for particular, and also working with PAP and bringing in experts like Debbie has really been a very enlightening, because we don't have those experts, on staff for the chamber. But our goal has been to develop, try to help develop an ordinance that would be easy and simple to follow and easy to enforce. One goal is so as not to be costly for the businesses or community, and to address the concerns and advocate for, lighting in the city of Hendersonville. We looked at the process as we went through and talked about a lot of different things, but for new businesses or new plans coming out, you're going to have a survey, you're going to have a site plan, you're going to buy lights that are going to meet all these ordinances that we discussed today. The concern really from the business from a cost standpoint is how do you bring non-conforming into conforming, and how do you go about doing that? We talked a lot about costs for different, fixtures. We've got Duke replacing bulbs for $36. I can't find anybody to replace bulbs for $36. Talking about, changing out light fixtures, and we've talked about $3,500, maybe less, to $2,100. But if you've got an existing business and you're now trying to meet a new set of ordinances, it's likely that you're going to spend money to pay for a survey. Going to have to get an engineer to come out and give out a lighting plan, and it's very likely that you're going to have to add more fixtures, which means you're going to have to put a footer in, run electrical to it, buy the pole and buy the fixture that's going to make it work. So the cost to get into compliance could be very, very high. So one of the kind of summarize what we're looking at is the amortization schedule is concern to the chamber. The 10 years, 15 years. That is important, if you could keep that in consideration. And then Debbie brings out a great point. Where were we 10 years ago and where we're going to be in 10 more years from, technology standpoint for lighting, and what will really be available to us in the future as we go forward. Additional fees, not only for the businesses trying to comply, but also the cost of staff from an enforcement standpoint. I don't know how these guys are becoming lighting experts on the fly, if you will, but you have to bring in additional staff, and what would that cost? And to bring in the technology that Debbie just showed, how do you measure the foot candle at the property line in the dark? How do you find the property line in the dark and then measure it to make all that happen? So the cost that can be very, very high. And then really we have a common interest in safety. We want a safe community, and the businesses want to have a safe environment for a lot of different reasons. If we were a gym, we want to have a gym that, if we discussed, you brought up earlier, that, folks feel comfortable coming to and from. Well, businesses that are open after dark want to have that same feeling to bring in people to their businesses and to make them healthy and survive. So kind of the overall, in conclusion, if you will, is our preference would be to only address problems with a simple solution rather than create a blanket ordinance, if that's possible. And we prefer, if not, we prefer the business advisory recommendations that were the ordinance, which would be an additional foot candle, looking at the amortization, and then the classification from the altering. The word altering has now been changed to improving, which I think is helpful. And I think some of those examples was helpful. But again, it leaves a lot of room for interpretation, in future years with different staff. If there's any changeover, how's the next person going to interpret that? I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to go next?
My name's Marilyn Gordon. I live at 234 State Drive, Hendersonville, actually Flat Rock. My family and I operate businesses here in Hendersonville, Norm's Minute Marts. I've operated 24-hour convenience stores here in Hendersonville for over 40 years. So I'm very familiar with the importance of outdoor lighting. And to me, this ordinance as it's intended and in direct really speaks to reducing outdoor lighting. There's nothing in the ordinance as it's written that really directly addresses safety or security, and to me those are the primary functions, and my mouth's very dry right now, so forgive me. But the safety and security of the residents is your primary obligation, and it's the primary purpose of this lighting. And I would really respectfully request that you would refer this back to the planning board, to the business advisory committee, and ask them to revise this draft so that it is focused on safety and security. I can assure you in 42 years, thank you, no one has ever asked me to reduce the lighting at my stores to make things safer. As a matter of fact, when we started in business, we checked with convenience store industry standards and found that the more lighting we had, the better and the safer it would be, and that's what we found over 42 years. And I can't get the bottle open. Okay, that's better. I have to imagine myself living in an apartment, multifamily apartment, and I have to walk a long way to get to my door, and the parking lot's not well lit. As Jennifer mentioned, going to the fitness center and the parking lot is not well lit. I'm a single old woman, and I know better than to get out of the car at night in a dark parking lot, and I think you can relate to that. In 10 years, when this ordinance is fully implemented, it won't make a difference to me, but I hope it makes a difference to you. And I hope you are willing to look back and say, okay, I did something good or I didn't, and understand that the technology changes, businesses changes. We've changed. We don't have the same lights we had 40 years ago. We've upgraded our lighting many times to get it more energy efficient. I don't like to pay a light bill. No business person likes to pay a light bill. But we do it because it's necessary for us to conduct business and for our employees, our customers, to be safe and secure. I lay awake at night worrying about their safety and security. And when you talk about burden, I think that some of these fellows can talk about financial burdens, but it's a burden to me to have my ability to provide for a safe and secure workplace or shopping environment taken away from me. I want to be able to do the best I can and be able to make a judgment call on what's right for my business. You're exempting a lot of institutions, but you're not giving the private sector the same ability to make decisions on what's best for them. So I just ask you to please refer it back to committee and let them come up with a better draft that I think nobody's going to argue about uplighting. We understand that. But I think so many of the people that are so concerned about dark sky are also very concerned about safety. And they're very concerned about security. So let's find a middle ground that accomplishes both without creating really an undue burden for the private sector. And that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
I'm Ken Gordon of 140 Sultana Drive, Hendersonville. I also work with Norm's Minute Mart, operating 24-hour convenience stores. And she has issues with safety and security, which is also very important. I want to point out the amortization part of this. I drove down Spartanburg Highway to work this morning. I was trying to count the number of floodlights that I saw, well over 150, just in a short drive. And, the question was asked how many businesses would be affected by this, and I would have to think nearly all would be affected by this. And floodlighting has been traditionally the most cost-effective way to have adequate lighting on a facility, and taking away that ability would require the addition of fixtures, as Bill pointed out, having to have more poles, more lights, add footings, wiring, et cetera. Would you lose parking spaces in your facilities if you added more poles? There's a lot of things that this contributes to, and amortization, in my mind, is just not a acceptable burden to place on existing businesses. All businesses that are open currently are legacy businesses, in my opinion, and asking them to change that is a difficult thing. The stream buffer, I understand the desire to have a stream buffer. However, there are uses within the city now where we have an example where we have a diesel fueling island located within the stream buffer. It's been there 42 years, has lighting over the top of it, and if I understand this correctly, in 10 years, it's a 24-hour location. It will have no light over the diesel fueling island, which by International Illuminating Engineer Society standards needs to have 6-foot candles. And you're telling me I'm going to have 0. And does that mean I can no longer safely operate that fueling position because it's in a stream buffer? My neighbor down the street covered that same stream 10 or 12 years earlier to build his facility. I never covered the stream. Should I have covered the stream, then this wouldn't be an issue? Or if I asked to cover the stream now, would I be given permission? I don't think I would. It's an interesting environment how it's changed. One thing on safety, I'd like to point out in 40 years of operating convenience stores, 10 years ago, if you had told me that we would have to install needle receptacles in our restrooms to protect our employees, I would not have believed you. It's a different world we live in. I think public safety can speak to that. In 10 years, what's it going to be like? I don't know. I would hate to see the ability of businesses to control some of those things through adequate lighting at night for the safety of our customers and employees to be impacted negatively. So appreciate your consideration of that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Bob Williford with the Chamber of Commerce. Bill covered all of our talking points, but I did want to just reiterate one, and that's the potential for recurring costs to the city. To find staff, a lighting engineer that would be able to go out and determine who's in compliance and who's not in compliance, to provide them with equipment, to provide them with office space, office supplies, all of that stuff. You're talking $150,000 to $200,000 every year that would be needed for that. So I did want to reiterate that and emphasize that point. And also, on the amortization, we would prefer that you stay with the typical grandfathering clause that you see in most city ordinances rather than add an amortization. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else here? Otherwise, you said we had a couple people online. Okay.
Yes, ma'am, we have 2 hands raised.
All right. We'll go ahead with that.
Lynn Williams, you've been unmuted.
Thank you. Lynn Williams, Chadwick Avenue. I wanted to speak in favor of the ordinance as presented and thank the staff and all the boards involved in moving this forward. I know it's something that's been in the conversation of many public hearings regarding project development, something that was a goal, but we couldn't, require it because there was nothing to enforce it. So I'm thankful that this step has moved forward. The planning board recommendation discussion review slide, it didn't specifically speak on the public comment, but on behalf of the public comment, there were members of the public speaking in favor of this ordinance. Ideally, I would love to see a 5-year amateurization. I feel like 10 years is a really long time. Where I live, we currently deal with a lot of light pollution, so much more than we're used to. So it's a very large impact. So to know that we might have to wait 10 years is a challenging thing to think about. And so I asked for something like an option where we could work with our neighbors, maybe to pay for the lighting or fixtures to be converted. Also potentially an option to create a lighting amortization expense fund over the next 10 years so that we can help businesses make that transition with the consideration, as Ms. Gordon pointed out, for public safety and security over the next 10 years during preparing for that amortization. Mr. Gordon said he saw 150 floodlights on Spartanburg Avenue. And as a resident that lives close to there, that has a really large impact on us. And so I really do hope that we can pass this. I hear the concerns of the Business Advisory Committee, and I believe that this has been taken into account by staff and the planning board and put forward in this recommendation offered to you today. Please take the public input and interest as well as the environment into account when making your decision. The cost that for the city to help reel in the lighting, let me restate that. The cost that the city will use to help regulate the lighting will help to reduce the externalized cost currently on the residents and the environment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. And then the next person.
Ralph Hammond Green, you are unmuted.
My name is Ralph Hammond Green, and I live at 1232 Hyman Avenue, Hendersonville. I also would like to speak in favor of the ordinance. It does not reduce lighting. It redirects lighting so that it is not going upward, and that is wasted energy. One can actually oftentimes reduce the size of the light fixture in its power consumption if they make it more efficient and direct the light downward. So I think businesses are concerned with expenses, and the newer light fixtures are less expensive to operate. Regarding amortization, many of the light fixtures have a lifetime of 5 to 10 years, and they would be normally replaced because they're broken and don't work anymore. So I think the 10-year amortization is a reasonable period of time, and I would encourage that be left into the ordinance. Regarding some of the comments pertaining to dark parking lots, this does not require dark parking lots. The amount of light in a particular private parking lot is up to the owner of that property. And if the owner of the property doesn't want to light it, that's their choice, and then customers won't go there because they're unsafe. So I think that question just doesn't fit, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to comment? Anyone else seeking recognition on?
No, Madam Mayor.
No? Okay. I don't think we're ready to vote on this tonight. I'd like to ask the city attorney, would it be better to continue the public hearing or close the public hearing and then next month go to discussion, reopen it if necessary? What do you suggest?
The reason to hold it open is if you want to accept more public comment. Otherwise, I wouldn't see a reason to hold it open. Any decision that you make can take into account and modify it based on public comments that you've heard. If it was a substantial modification that was so substantial it wasn't even considered by the planning board, it may have to go back. I don't know that that would happen, but as far as closing the public hearing, unless you want to hear more public comments, I think it's perfectly okay to close it and then vote. You could discuss it now, you can discuss it again and vote. People would still be able to comment at general public comments at the next meeting, even though the public hearing was closed.
Can we reopen the public hearing at that time?
I'd prefer that you just continue it if you think that there's a possibility you may want to allow the public comments to continue as part of the formal hearing.
I guess my thoughts on leaving it open is we have a lot of things to talk about, and in our discussions, we may significantly change some of the things that were in the presentation tonight, which I don't know how that affects the planning board stuff.
Right.
I don't know about that. But I can just see where there might be the need for people to make comments on
Well,
that.
if we start going into discussion, I think that's a little awkward while public comment is still open.
I don't think there's anything that precludes you from, if you decided you needed a second public hearing, to schedule another public hearing.
We could do that.
Yeah, you just
Okay.
couldn't decide at the next meeting, oh, well, let's just open it back up. You couldn't do that.
Okay, hold on.
Okay,
So we'd have to do all the notice and stuff if we did that, correct?
that's correct.
Yeah.
That means we'd have to decide how many days before the meeting that
Yes.
it would be a public hearing.
Unless you continue it. If you continue it, you don't have to do additional notice. Otherwise, it's once a week for 2 successive calendar weeks. The first time, not more than
Okay.
21 days. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
But if we continued it, we could close it as soon as we got there at the meeting, correct?
Sure.
We wouldn't have to take any more comments.
You don't
But
have
if
to.
we don't have,
But if you've advertised it as a public hearing, I would advise that people who've shown up to speak, you let them speak.
Right.
if we do want to do some modification, I think I'd rather get public comment on more of a semi-final proposal than just continuing what we've already heard, until we have a chance to look at something new and discuss it.
Okay, so at what point do we trigger it has to go back to the planning board? Like what
It's a judgment call of somewhat, but if it's a substantial modification that they did not discuss or consider, you would have to send it back.
Can we just say no uplighting? Is that like a?
Well, that's within the scope of what has been discussed.
That's the only problem anybody has is like uplighting. Can we just have a one sentence ordinance that we do not allow uplighting?
But I would consider that a substantial modification.
Yeah.
Taking out, right.
I'm not
taking out.
disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just saying that would definitely be a substantial
I think so.
modification.
I think I would send that back.
Could we send that back?
So,
I think we better look at, I mean, if that's ultimately where we want to go, but I think when we started this, we started because there may have potentially been that our ordinance was not adequate where it was, right? And council, I'm hearing council say we may have gone too far. But
I'm not saying that.
no.
I'm not saying we've gone too far.
I know.
I'm not saying that.
I know. But I guess my point is, we better look at everything holistically than just to say,
is
I
not.
would.
I would look at everything holistically.
I would close the public hearing, discuss everything
That you've heard.
give some direction if there's more information you want, so that you can give better direction, and then decide at what, if you want to change it, how you want to change it. And then, I hate to say it, but because I know, hate for Lou's benefit to say it, but send it back after you have discussed it and decided what changes you'd like to see made.
Is there a professional somewhere, though, that can tell us, like, this ordinance change or ordinance will not affect public safety? Is someone willing to make that statement, like a professional or like a,
I don't know that they're necessarily the same thing. You might add, because people can have a light every foot if they wanted to, as long as they weren't bleeding off site and weren't uplighting, right? And as long as they had the right rating, they could put in 1,000 lights as long as it was done appropriately. And so, but that would be more, it would cost more to put in more lights. So there's a cost factor associated with that. And so.
Plus, I would
Yeah,
say, some of the.
Can we go ahead and close the public hearing, and then we can do some more
Sure.
discussion? So, since there's nobody else who,
Just one question, as a member of the Business Advisory Board committee, can I request that maybe this be, at least be able to be heard by that committee again, if you're going to not vote on this tonight? Because I, as Ms. Hensley pointed out, I've thought that this could be done in about a three-sentence ordinance. It'd be quite simple, yet effective, and I would appreciate an opportunity to have that looked at.
can submit that to council, and we'll consider that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, now, you want to discuss more tonight? Give direction to staff to come back with something else? What is the pleasure?
I have so many notes and questions written down that
I
I
have
feel like
a
we
ton of
could,
questions.
we could discuss this for hours. So I'm fine if we want to delay our discussion, or if we want to do a little bit now, we can. I mean, I have plenty of notes to discuss, but I don't think this ordinance has gone too far. I think there are some things, especially after these presentations, that I would change, but I think it's also important to note that the whole point of this ordinance is to reduce the light pollution. No, we haven't gotten a lot of complaints from neighbors about light bleeding over. For me, it's always been more about the uplight, the stream buffer lighting, maintaining a well-lit environment, but still taking in environmental concerns. And I think that goes along with, yes, we may have always used floodlights in the past, but when we know better, we do better. And lighting has come a long way, and it will continue to come a long way. I don't know if I'm necessarily in favor of the amortization. I have heard several concerns about enforcing it. I think we have several triggers in there that if you are replacing so many of your lights and all of those other fail-safes, that you will have to bring yourself into compliance, which I think will help cover most of that, because as someone already mentioned, most lights will go out in 5 to 10 years, so you're probably going to be updating your lights anyways. So I think there are definitely some details that we need to talk about, but I think all in all of the groups that have been a part of the ordinance, all of the staff time, you guys have done a really good job making it, I think, as condensed as it can possibly be. I think we also all know that government is not going to write something that's just 3 sentences, because we like to complicate things. So I think to just go from all of this to no uplighting would be a huge mistake, because it's not going to intend the long-term impact that we want it to have. I know that it's new, and as a business owner, you hear it and you're like, oh my God, just hearing tick, tick, ting, 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 ting. But I don't think it's going to be quite as dramatic as everyone is thinking it's going to be. So like I said, I have a lot of questions, I have a lot of comments, but I could talk about this for way too long.
Is it possible that we at least discuss this on the 25th, whatever the date of that is?
Okay.
The workshop meeting.
And then we vote at the following meeting, or at least that's what we would, leaving tonight, we would plan to have our discussion then, and then we would plan to vote on it at the next meeting, which will actually be 2 weeks after that, because we're going to change, when we're going to change, right? Yeah.
Unless we made a lot of changes, in which case.
Right,
we'd
then,
send
of
it
course, if we make a lot of changes, apparently we got to send it back through the whole process anyway.
back, Which I think is only fair.
I would agree. I mean,
And in that 25th meeting, like all your meetings is public, it's your second meeting of the month, and so folks in the audience could attend and listen and be part of the conversation. Well, not be part, but could attend.
Okay?
does that need a motion?
I don't think we need a motion to.
Okay. So can we put this on the
Direct
agenda
staff.
for the 25th?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, but do we, since we're not voting tonight, do we have to say something that is on the agenda for voting in February?
You don't. As long as it's at a you can put it on any regular meeting that you have. Or you could do a special called with notice saying that's the purpose of the meeting.
No, I get it, but like tonight, are we agreeing that we're going to put this on the agenda of the February meeting? Or is that something we'll decide on the 25th?
Yeah. I think we can't
okay.
decide that
We
unless we
better decide
know.
on the 25th.
Okay, if we decide on the 25th, for example, that we were going to vote on it, there's no like time problems on that?
No, sir.
Okay.
Let me put a little bit of a monkey wrench. The only time problem would be if you wanted to have another public hearing. If you,
Right.
We'd have to wait a whole nother meeting cycle.
Right.
If you wanted to open the public hearing back up again, I don't know that we have enough window to advertise, so.
After the 25th for the February meeting, we probably would not.
Yeah.
Which if we didn't make a lot of changes, I
Yeah,
don't see a reason why we want to.
Yeah, I talked about I just want to make sure you're clear about that, so.
Would members of council, if you have specific concerns or questions or comments, forward them to staff so they can kind of incorporate
Yeah.
the
Email
answers
ready
to
to go.
those or responses to those in a presentation or for leading discussion on the 25th. Okay? And again, if the public wants to add additional comments, can be done as well. All right? Okay, thank you all for your thoughtful comments and presentations, and to be continued. All right. Anyone want to take a break?
No, I just want a piece of chocolate.
Yes.
Anyone want to take a break for
Sure.
5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, 5-minute break. session. If you would, please. It's just us. Well, not everybody left. Amy's there. All right, unfinished business. Consideration of ordinance amending Chapter 20, Article 2, noise of the Hendersonville City Code. All right, and who is leading this?
So this is going to be a team effort. I think I'm going to start off doing most of the talking, but we do have a little show and tell, so maybe it'll be a little bit interesting for you. Before we do the show and tell, though, as you'll recall, we presented an ordinance that had been spearheaded by our former intern, Rodney Gillum, and so we're just continuing his good work. And I want to begin with providing you a little bit of information about noise. Got to give my disclaimer, of course, I am not a noise expert. So this is based on what I was able to find. And so I found two major sources to look at. One would be information from the World Health Organization, and the other was by the EPA. And both had conducted studies many years ago. But the World Health Organization's data was more on European countries, so I went with the EPA. And in 1972, this is how old this is, they're still publishing this as their most current information if you go to their website, though. But in 1972, Congress passed an act that asked the EPA, required the EPA to do some study of environmental noise and to determine basically at what levels does environmental noise start to become harmful to the public health and welfare. And they set out some guidance that the EPA had to follow, and they said that public health and welfare includes not only physical health, things like hearing loss or physiological responses to noise, but also mental health and disruption with normal activities. In other words, public welfare included minimizing an annoyance factor that might come into play with repeated disruptions of normal activities due to noise. And so the stated purpose was to provide guidance to state and local governments to help decide at what point you're going to interject and regulate noise levels. And so they produced a study in 1974, and so this is, it's like, 250 pages, so this is a way condensed version, gleaning what I could from it. But basically, by environmental noise, it's the intensity, duration, and character of sounds from all sources at a particular given time. So if we all were, if I stopped talking, we sat silently, there's still a level of ambient environmental noise that's in the room. And so they used a statistical approach to come up with averages and measures that could be applied to most situations. They determined that the magnitude of sound, as opposed to the frequency, and in 2022 or 2023, that could have changed a little bit, but we're not talking about frequency of sound today. We're talking about the level of noise. But at that time was most important as far as cumulative noise effects were concerned. So the equivalent sound level is what they used, and that's the average sound over a period of time. And the basic unit of sound is the decibel. It was A-weighted. And one thing that, in looking at their study, again, it's an average. It's an average amount of sound over a given period of time. So they looked at 24-hour periods, 8-hour periods to evaluate environmental noise. So it doesn't mean that that's going to be the constant level of noise. It means that when you take all the variations into account, that's the average noise that somebody is exposed to over a given period of time. So just a few things that I thought were interesting. And again, when you're adopting a new ordinance, you don't want to do it, without having some sort of base level to judge it from. So like with the lighting, we all have seen a candle in a dark room. We all can visualize, maybe not exactly, but have some idea of what amount of light a candle produces. But I don't know about you, but I have no idea what a decibel of sound is, right? So I thought it would be helpful to have a frame of reference when you're evaluating these noise levels in the ordinance. Couple of points is when you're trying to evaluate what level of sound to regulate, sound, when you're, it's invited, or you're producing the sound, or you're engaging in an activity so that it's voluntarily exposure to sound, you're going to tolerate a higher level than when it's an involuntary imposition on you. And so, when you're considering what these noise levels are and should be, that's just something to bear in mind, that I might be sitting in my home, reading a book, and I am exposed to 65 decibels of noise, whereas if I was listening to music exposed to it, it would be acceptable. But when you start talking about annoyance, the fact that it's involuntarily being imposed on you comes into play. So when they were evaluating environmental noise, they could quantify the impact of intrusive noise on speech. So if I turn off my mic and I'm talking in normal voice, normal conversational voice, that's what they use to determine what levels of intrusive noise would disrupt that and interfere with your ability to hear somebody when you're conversing in a normal tone of voice. And they could actually quantify that. So that's what they used to start to determine what an acceptable level of environmental noise was. So the results of the study are on page 2, but basically indoors, normal conversation can occur at 100% intelligibility. So that's what they judged, how could you hear and understand what the person was saying to you. With an environmental noise level of 45 decibel when the talker and listener are about 1.1 meters apart, like like Debbie and I are, sorry. That we should be able, and inside in a normal room, the sound level's pretty constant. Outside, sound tends to dissipate. So outside at 55 decibels, if you're 2 meters or 3 meters apart, you have 95% intelligibility, and that's considered acceptable. So another thing I learned is that walls absorb about 15 decibels worth of sound. So if somebody's producing 60 decibels of sound outside, and this is averages, the level of noise that I'm going to hear inside is 50 decibels. And so as a result of learning that, I went in and I've tweaked the chart a little bit. But basically the bottom line is that the tolerable level of environmental noise is indoors is recommended at 45 decibels and outside is recommended at 55 decibels. And so that's where your normal activities aren't going to be interfered with. So when you consider sorry, I'm not doing a good job of explaining it, but it's like it's a level that you consider acceptable such that new noise that comes in that raises the noise level to a certain level is going to start to interfere with your ability to enjoy your normal activities. So if you look at the next page, this is again from the study, but they determined that like a small store with 1 to 5 clerks, average over the 8-hour day is 60 decibels. For a larger store, it's going to go up to 65. For a small office with 1 to 2 desks, it's about 58 decibels. You can see a medium office, it goes up to 63. Large office, 67. Inside a typical residence, it's 40 to 45. At speech at 10 feet would raise it to about 55. TV might raise it 55 to 60. And stereo music might raise it to somewhere between 50 and 70 or even higher, depending on how loud you like to listen to your music. But it kind of gives you an idea of what the level of noise that different types of activities produce. The next page, they took into account, so in the first column, it's if you have 45 decibels, which is again just a normal level of sound, and we're having a conversation, then if you have a noise intrusive level of 45, that's the next column, you're still going to be able to hear 100% of what's being said because it's the same level of noise you're at, so the percent interference is 0. But if that intrusive noise goes up to 60 decibels, for 3% of the time, it's going to interfere 2%. At 70, it goes up to 40%, and at 75, it's going to interfere with your ability to hear your person or interfere with your activity 100% of the time. So this first column is the intrusive noise, and it helps you determine that what impact it's going to have on your ability to enjoy your normal activity if you have that level of intrusive noise. So in other words, if I'm sitting in my living room and I'm talking with my husband, and then all of a sudden, that's 45 decibels, and then all of a sudden, somebody's outside playing really loud music in the street such that it raises the level inside to 70 decibels, that's going to have a 40% interference with our ability to talk and enjoy what we're doing. And so this outdoors, they use 60 as the level, and then you can see at 75 decibels, it would interfere 100% with my ability to carry on a conversation outside. So I bring all this to you just to kind of give a frame of reference. So when you look at the chart of what's acceptable and not acceptable in a noise ordinance, this is to try and help determine the impact that level of noise might have on your just normal activity, your normal day-to-day activity. So, all that being said, the ordinance is not intended to regulate noise level generally. The ordinance is designed to determine at what level are we going to regulate noise, at what level are we going to punish somebody for producing too much noise that's unreasonably disruptive to their neighbor. So we aren't saying we're trying to make it so that everybody has a level of 45 decibels in their apartment, but we are saying that if their neighbor is producing so much noise that it raises the level in their apartment to 90, then that person in the other apartment is going to get a ticket. Is going to, we're trying to discourage that type of activity. So the focus of the ordinance is to determine at what level is it appropriate for government to step in and regulate noise. Does that make sense? Okay, so the ordinance basically takes a two-prong approach. So the ordinance says we're going to look at noise from two different standpoints. First, in terms of the level of noise that's produced based on decibels. So there's a chart in there, and it says if you are residential and you're next to a commercial, then that commercial business can't produce so much noise that it raises the level in your home above these levels. And so residential is in the middle. And so residential from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., if the measurement's taken outdoor, that would be 65 decibels. If it's taken indoor, that would be 50 decibels. From 10 p.m. to 7, it lowers to where the measurement taken outdoors would be 55, the measurement taken indoors would be 45. So again, if I'm sitting in my living room and I live next to a commercial establishment and that commercial establishment produces so much noise that the level in my house is 50, then they're violating the noise. If we take the measurement outside in my yard and it measures at 65, then they're violating the noise ordinance.
Can I ask a question? On that outdoor, indoor is easy, you got to be inside the house. On the outdoor one, you take it at the edge of my property, correct?
Right. Well, I mean, it can't exceed that level at any point.
Right, but you don't
But the
stand
best
in the front
would-
door, you could actually stand right at the edge of the property
That's the
line.
best one, right?
Yeah.
Right, because the noise is going to dissipate
Correct.
as it gets closer to your home. So, the levels that are in here, the outdoor levels are levels that were based on, I don't even know which municipality. What, sorry? Wilmington? So these are noise levels that have been determined by at least one other municipality to say above this level is too much, and so violators will get a civil penalty, or in the worst case, could be arrested for violating the noise ordinance. So, so that's the one approach, is the decibel level. The second approach is like a nuisance approach, and I took the language, I rewrote the definition, because I took the language straight out of a Supreme Court case. that passed the constitutional muster. So this definition has been blessed as being legal for the nuisance approach. But basically, that says it shall be unlawful for any person or group of persons to willfully make, cause, or continue to make any continued loud, raucous, and/or disturbing noise, which shall mean any sound which, because of its volume, level, duration, and/or character, annoys, disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, health, peace, or safety of reasonable persons of ordinary sensibilities within the limits of the city of Hendersonville. So, what does that mean? It's a reasonable person test, which sounds like it's subjective, but it's not. It's really an objective test. So, if a reasonable person of ordinary sensibilities would think their peace and peacefulness and, in their home was being disruptive, if it's such that a reasonable person would determine that it had been disruptive, that would be a violation. So it allows two methods for our officers to be able to enforce the ordinance. And so so I've included a couple of examples in there that might help. So like, for instance, if the music in my neighbor's house is so loud that it's rattling my windows, that's probably unreasonably disruptive. Or if it's thumping my floors, that's probably unreasonably intrusive and would be a violation. So there's a qualitative and a quantitative approach in this ordinance to give our officers the most flexibility to enforce the ordinance. So
in other words, regardless of decibel level, there's still the reasonableness standard that they could use.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and one factor that, even if they're using the reasonableness factor, one factor they can use as objective evidence is a noise level reading that they took, right? So anyway, so these numbers, when if I look at it and I say 75 decibels or 60 decibels inside, that means nothing until I think, well, 45 decibels is the level at which we could carry on a conversation. And so 65 decibels relative to that is quite an increase, but you're saying that's the level at which people should be regulated, right? So, now to the fun part, right? So, I wanted to do a demonstration. So John brought his, we came down this afternoon and tested this out.
I'm so happy.
And so
Just taking a picture of you while you're doing this. So
really. John has his speaker, and so I'm gonna carry my microphone with me and come around too. But I wanted to judge a distance, right? Because outside sound dissipates, and so the recommended level outside is 60 decibels at 3 meters. So we measured, and from here to your seat is 3 feet. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the speaker in front of each of you, right, with the noise meter around behind them, so they can see, so you can experience what that level is. What is 65 decibels? What is 55 decibels, based on the music? I take no credit for the song selection. This is your city manager's. This is your city manager's.
So where do you want me to put it?
Playlist. So we're going to put it right here. Put it right here. And so let's do with the mayor first.
So
okay.
Are you going to do different levels?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So first, we'll do 50 decibels. So he's got to get it going first. Okay, what level is that, Chief?
Well, when you're talking, it's very loud, but. We're at 64 right now. That's 55.
It's really low.
Okay, but okay. Do it again. But think about, do you want to hear noise at that level from your neighbor? So if 15 decibels dissipates, right, that means it's 15 decibels louder next door.
So what level is that?
It's a 60.
Trying to figure out what song that is.
That's Eruption.
I know I'd heard it before.
Turn it up to 65. No, so you would be able to hear your neighbors at that level.
It's pretty high. Yeah.
Here, let's do it over here.
I mean, if it's good music, it's probably okay.
At least it's more entertaining than the light industry.
Now we're talking. 70.
A 70?
You really got me going.
What's that? Okay, that's good.
Good.
But can I, so if I were, based upon these standards, if I were ever, like, I'm thinking like I'm inside, not outside.
Right.
Well, like it was 70 when he was sitting next to me, that would not fit on any of these standards ever. If I'm ever sitting in my house and the decibel level is 70 where I'm sitting, indoors, it can never be 70 at anywhere ever. Right. So
Right.
I'm just saying that to me, that's the standards you have set are
I didn't say it. This is just, okay.
standards that were set by the EPA and the European Union. Okay.
Well, no, I'm just saying
Sorry, the World Council, my fault.
well, I mean, the ones in the draft ordinance are just starting points.
Okay.
So this is just for you to think about and determine what level of noise you feel like is appropriate to regulate. So if you think about it at 65, that was pretty loud, but it was welcome
Think
noise.
how loud it would be if it were outside and I could hear it, that would be blasting.
Exactly. And so, and not to mention, when the song came, that was welcome noise. And so you weren't minding it. But if it was something that was unwelcome noise, it might produce an annoyance factor. And so.
Like dogs barking.
Like dogs or like all kinds of things. So it's just to give you some more information to have a frame of reference to think about. So not asking you to vote or anything tonight, but I did think I wanted to give you some more information so that you could make a more informed decision when you're considering what noise levels from the quantitative standpoint that you want to enforce. I want to say one note about the criminal penalties. As you know, pretty much the legislature has gone all but decriminalized our municipal ordinances, even when we say something is a crime. They've made it so that if you are arrested or charged with a criminal violation of a city ordinance, when it comes to trial, all you've got to do is show that you didn't violate it again in 30 days, and it'll get dismissed. So you're not really, assuming somebody's not a habitual violator, you're not opening people up to getting a criminal record so much as it's a tool to allow our law enforcement to remove a person from a situation where it needs to happen to help them enforce the ordinance. Does that make sense? Whereas if they just write somebody a ticket and they don't turn it down, they're going to write them another ticket. And then they're going to write, but eventually there comes a point when they need to be able to arrest the person to stop the violation, to remove them from the scenario. And so that's the purpose in most of our ordinances now. To have a criminal violation is just to allow law enforcement to have a tool to control the situation.
You're so fair and reasonable. You really are.
So if you have any questions or wanting more information, I'll do my best to find them out for you. But we'll put this on another agenda for you to consider.
We're not voting on this tonight?
I mean, if you feel ready, we can.
Yeah.
Because it has criminal penalties, it'll take 2 readings to
Anyway,
pass.
Sure, well, I mean, let's don't wait.
Okay.
We got the gizmo, we got the numbers.
Right,
That's what we
okay.
needed.
If you're comfortable with it, there's nothing that says you can't vote.
All right.
Okay. Madam Mayor, I move that the city council adopt an ordinance of the city of Hendersonville City Council. What? I'll just read it. Madam Mayor, I move that the city council adopt an ordinance of the city of Hendersonville City Council to amend Chapter 20, Article 2 of the Code of Ordinances, noise, as presented for the first reading. Got it.
Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of adopting the noise ordinance modification, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it, and the motion passes on this first reading.
And if acceptable, we'll just put it back on.
funny over there.
You were betting we wouldn't do it?
No, Lou's gonna bring a candle next time.
Turn out the lights.
Turn out the lights and then we'll sing Kumbaya. There we go.
Madam Mayor, if acceptable, we'll just throw it back on your consent agenda
Yes.
for the second
Okay.
reading.
In all fairness, Louise, yours is way more complicated.
Yes.
Also, if you don't have a candle next time, I'm gonna be really disappointed. As long as the fire chief's okay with us bringing the candle.
All right, thank you. Moving on to new business. Parking fee amendment.
Girl. You get some intro music right there when we got it. We're ready to go.
You need
Yeah, who's got the speaker?
Might be driving a mini car or something for demonstration.
As much as I've enjoyed
baseball, walk-up.
Lou's regulation of the 5 senses, I don't have chicken sandwiches for taste or anything related to smell or touch tonight. So I guess next month, Lou, fried chicken maybe. So yeah, we're here to talk about parking, and I will try to be efficient with the time here. Just to give some background, we started talking about this project. Well, it's been talked about for decades, but this project specifically was January of 2020. Welcome to City Council, Lindsay and Jennifer at that time. And I think Council at the time said, yes, we're ready to build a parking deck. And in September of 2021, we said, yes, we'll take that guaranteed maximum price, and we are prepared to pay to do that. One key aspect that we've talked about this whole time is the parking triangle. If you can only have 2 of the 3, I think everyone agrees that convenient and available parking is what our desire is for our Main Street municipal service districts. I think the big question of contention, I think to steal from Lou, I don't know if you said no one is happy or whatever you might have said, how you pay for it, right? Not free, how you pay for it has been the point of contention. And what we've heard throughout is, maybe the permit structure is too high, the meters should pay more, the property taxpayer should pay more, and the meters should pay less. So it's been kind of all over the place. We even heard at the community meeting on how to pay, we heard seniors should get a discount, ADA spots should pay for parking. So we've heard the whole gambit of who should pay for this. Not me is essentially what the result was. But everyone does want convenient and available parking, so someone has to pay. So tonight we'll talk about the fee schedule amendment, the permit RSVPs and community input meeting, and the final recommendations and some logistics from City Council tonight, hopefully leading into some ordinance revisions for March 1st and the grand opening of the parking deck. So just a little background, we don't typically amend the budget ordinance. You adopt the budget ordinance annually, and it's typically set in stone from that point forward. This fee schedule amendment is actually amending that ordinance. It is legal, and it is something we don't do often, but we will be doing tonight twice. The fee schedule amendment is in your agenda. What you'll see in front of you, and we'll be talking to you and requesting tonight, are the changes on this fee schedule to be effective March 1st, 2023. The big pieces you'll notice are pretty much all of the violations have increased from $25 to $50. A construction daily parking permit has increased from $5 to $15 to make that compatible with a typical daily cost if someone were to park on Main Street, to make it compatible with the day's rent of that space. And then you can see the permit structure changes, which we've gone over, changing to the $80 deck permit, $60 interior lot permit, and $25 exterior lot permit. And lastly, the big ones, the meter changes on street from a half hour to a per hour cost from $1 to $1.50 in the surface lots and decks, and $2 on Main Street and the avenues. And we've also made some improvements to how our penalties, if you get a citation, work to give the offender more time to actually pay their ticket without unreasonable fees piling up on them in the meantime. So permits, we talked about permits at our community meeting held on November 9th. We had a variety of input during that meeting. Most of it was, I don't want to lose my 24/7 space, but ultimately that is the direction we're heading, is going away from you have one space that you use only when you're there and then no one else can use it. We've talked at length about kind of the parking management changes there. And then also we heard from just some general public about, who's going to pay, what I covered earlier. Everyone thinks the structure be somewhat a little different than how it's going to affect them personally. And then we did hear some input, I think, that we can consider moving forward is, maybe we don't mind losing our 24/7 spot, but I still just want to park in this specific lot from the interior lot. So the Apple lot versus the Maple Annex, they want to just say, I'm a Maple Annex buyer, I just want to park there. I don't want to buy an interior lot permit and be able to park in Apple, Maple Annex, or Azalea. So they kind of still grabbing to the single use. I think ultimately an interior lot permit, if your spots are taken in Spruce or some other place, having the capacity to go to Maple Annex or Apple is going to be beneficial for the user in the long run. So that's something we can work on. If we need to go more restrictive with that, we can. After 2 months of having the RSVP option open, we've had about $153,000 worth of sales. You can see the breakdown. The deck has about 49 signups. That includes our 16 contractually obligated spaces due to the land purchase. The interior lot includes 68 sales, and then the exterior lot, so Dogwood lot, had 192 signups. So oversold right now by about 8 spots. We do know there's one tenant that's shopping around, but we're holding some spaces for them potentially. So those are the results of the RSVPs. One telling item I think in here is most of the RSVPs tend to be businesses, so they're signing up as Agape Salon or Safe Light or Mass General or Skyline Hotel. We have not seen much employee-only signups. So I think possibly with the holidays and just general busyness, not paying attention to what's going on, there's probably a good deal of employees out there that don't know about the permits becoming available. And that's something I think we'll see, especially this exterior lot, already sold 192 signups. I think there's additional demand out there that we haven't captured in the RSVPs. So that will be something to watch out for and something we're going to consider going forward. Yes, Jerry?
But even if someone bought in a Mass General store, it applies to somebody's parking.
That's right, yeah.
Driver's plate.
Yeah, exactly.
License plate, excuse me, yeah.
Yeah, we just haven't had many individual employees, like
Right.
I work at Shine and I need a parking spot. We haven't seen many of those yet. We've had about 8, I think. So most of these are businesses, the businesses paying attention, getting spots for their employees. Other individual employees we haven't seen much of. And then we'll get to a decision point here shortly.
Can you explain what -8 means?
So
it's
based on
184, but what does that mean practically?
So we talked about the best practice for selling permits, right? If it's a permit-only lot, you can oversell the lot by 120%. If it's a mixed lot, you can sell it at 80% of the total spaces as permits. So Dogwood in this example is being sold at 120%. So 184 spaces are available for 157 total actual spaces in the lot. So right now we have 192 folks who've signed up for that lot. So really that lot's already, by standard practice, overbooked.
Okay, what does that mean then? Does 8 people say, sorry, no, thank you, I tried next year?
Yeah, and what we've communicated is first come, first serve. So that's something we're looking at, first come, first serve. And also talking with the downtown group, we're talking about should we put caps on a single person buying up 30 spaces?
Okay.
So another consideration. And that's something we're going to work through as we actually open the physical sales. So this is just, I'm interested, I'm going to do an RSVP. They may or may not materialize.
Because they haven't actually-
but I think there's more folks out there. So this is going to be, I think the exterior lot concept of having spaces for residents and employees is going to be important going forward. I'm very happy, honestly, with the deck and interior lot signups. You don't want to sell out everything. So it's good we have space in the internal aspect of the MSD, but yeah, that more affordable option, it is concerning that we don't have more assets that we can provide for that. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything here. Okay, and that's going to lead to a decision point here that we're going to ask for tonight. Yeah, okay. Our model for the revenues, we were estimating about $190,000 for permits in revenue. Right now we're 153, 154. So we're a little below that, but I feel pretty comfortable based on those RSVPs. So I think we'll get close to enough to that and make it up in other areas. So the 4 decision areas that we're going to ask you tonight, one is an enforcement aspect. Handicap parking has been a conversation. We have not charged for handicap parking. It turns out after looking at our ordinance, we don't have anything that actually says we can do that. So people should be paying for handicap parking in surface lots. All the other communities we've looked at do charge for handicap parking. The deck is going to require payment. It will be very difficult to exempt payment in the deck because it's a self-operated system. We don't really have an option where someone could scan like their ADA tag and get into the deck or out of the deck. And then ultimately, if you wanted to exempt handicap parking, that would have ordinance impacts that we would have to work through with legal. So tonight, based on the research we've done, our recommendation is handicap parking should pay for parking just as everyone else pays for parking. But that is a decision we're seeking guidance on. And if it works, I'll talk through each of these, show you a couple maps, and then come back and we can get guidance. Does that work? Okay. The second piece is time limits. So right now, Main Street has a 3-hour time limit. We've discussed this a little bit due to the fact that it's going to be paid parking now. There's been some discussion of upping the time limit or having no time limit. So you could come down, you could pay to park on Main Street, and you could stay there all day if you wanted, as long as you're paying. And we think the market of payment will encourage that occupancy and that turnover. So our recommendation is no time limit. Additionally, part of the goal of this was somebody could come downtown, pull up Park Mobile, they're in a restaurant, their time's running out on their meter, they can extend their time from their phone. If we had a cap on that, that would limit someone's ability to do that. So our recommendation would be no time limit, but if council were to want us to install a time limit, we can. The fee schedule amendments, so we've talked those ad nauseum, so you have those in front of you tonight. I won't go through them again. And then lot management. So the Dogwood lot is something we talked about originally when we spoke to you last about this. I think in August, we had thought it would be good to have it as a mixed lot, so you'd have meters, people can pay the meter come in, and also permits could come in. However, due to what we saw from the community meeting and the RSVPs, our recommendation right now is 24/7, 365. It's a fully permitted lot. The other kind of middle ground option is you could do during enforcement hours, 9 to 7, Monday through Saturday. It's permit, and then after that, it would be free and then open to the public. Our thought with this is we can certainly move to be less restrictive, right? We can sell our permits. If Dogwood is consistently open, it's very easy to drop the meter in and let other people come park in there. If we go the other route, if we say it's a mixed lot out of the gate and we sell permits and it's constantly full and then we have people who can't get in with their permit, we have a much bigger problem of reversing that, I think, on our hands than just starting at a 24/7, 365 permit-only lot. I think that gives us the most flexibility moving forward, so that's our recommendation from that perspective. Just to put this on a visual, you can see the lots here again with the permit spaces and the cost for each lot. But really the key difference from the map we had shown earlier are the metered parking. You would notice here is that Dogwood is not a metered parking option. You could park in the deck, you could park in Spruce, Maple, or Azalea, or the avenues, or Main Street.
The question I have had is from members of the Baptist Church. Can they park there for church on Sunday mornings?
So under the 24/7, 365, they would not be able to. Under a 9 to 7, Monday through Saturday, they would. The one other thing I would point out is the new parking deck with 153 spaces would be available.
But it's not across the street.
It's not, it is one extra block, that is correct.
Plus, I mean.
And they could buy parking permits if they wanted, but that would be very difficult for them to manage. They would have to know their users' license plates.
If we did the 9/7 MS permit plus free option up there, that would sort of be like what it's like now. There are some.
It's just completely a jumble right now. Some of them are.
But some of them are.
Some of them are 24/7 reserved. Some of them are 9 to 7 reserved. So it's a complete mix.
But some of them are permitted per se.
Yeah.
And some of them are not. That is the closest one to the current hodgepodge.
Correct.
Because it's definitely not all permit 24/7 all year long.
Right. And yeah, and I think from just staff's perspective is that I think that is the compromise. If it does oversell though, we're going to be able to sell less permits, I think.
Well, I mean, we haven't sold the permits yet, correct?
Correct, but we've had the RSVPs.
I know, but if we come back and say, okay, we can only sell this many, we take the first ones that have asked for one. So it's not like we've already sold them something.
No, right. We would just sell less and there'd be a waiting list.
I will say, I think I'm more in favor of making it 24/7, 365 to start. One, because Brian said it will be easier to go the other way than it would be to start mixed and then go back to 24/7. And that number of RSVPs, I think Brian's right. I think we've missed a lot of people that would be interested. So we're already going to be short by doing permits 24/7.
I know, but I mean,
And there's plenty of other options for
No.
meters.
No. So culturally, the way it's been is that lot on those other times, people can park there. So if I show up at 8 o'clock or I show up on Sunday, I can park there. To make it where you cannot park there at all unless you have a permit is a major cultural change to that particular lot in the city of Hendersonville. And I'll also add, I don't go to First Baptist, but I know that it is used a lot. And so we're telling all those people, you can't park in this lot, even if there's nobody in the lot. You can't park there on Sunday morning. So all those people that have permits, they're not gonna come in on Sunday morning. So it's sitting there wide open, and we're gonna write those people tickets when they're parking in that lot, which is not going to make sense to me, to the average person who has used that lot for years. And so I appreciate it may be easier on the technology point of view, but when people come by on Sunday and there's nobody in the lot, and they go park in the lot and they get a ticket, and they'll be like, what's up with this? I didn't take anybody's spot. I think that's a problem. For that, the Dogwood lot, which is the one I'm referring to, because that lot gets a lot of uses. And for years, I mean, even I know that. I know when to show up and I don't have to pay for parking there if I park there. So I appreciate what you're saying, Brian, totally. But I do think that lot has some historical, I'll use the word legacy, we used that somewhere tonight, to it that I think we need to respect in this process, considering all the other changes that so that's my comment, that I think that.
Could we lease that spot to the church on Sunday mornings?
But there's no way to know that a church person is in the spot. If somebody else shows up.
Unless you know their specific license plate.
Correct, unless you attach it to a license plate.
Just to clarify, it's not a technology challenge that I was thinking of. I was thinking of a political challenge of, going backwards from.
But to me, the going backwards is much greater when you make it 24/7, 365. That is going backwards compared to what it is now. A much larger going backwards, particularly on Sunday and on the weekends.
Are they fully utilizing their parking lot on Fifth? The one that, the big one that they have? Because I feel like I drive up and going to Mass on Sundays, and I feel like that parking lot is not actually ever full.
The other one's more convenient.
Convenient and free
I
and
just-
accessible, all three.
But the other one is also theirs, and Dogwood is everyone's.
I get it. So, I mean, to me, I guess that's where I see the 9-7 as a compromise on that. And it's not just the church I'm referring to, you know? And I recognize that I'm not including the parking deck. So I'm not thinking about, oh, there's now a parking deck down the street that you could park as well. I just think for that one to go cold turkey, which means you have to have a permit to park, and there's no question, there's going to be a Saturday or a Sunday, and people are going to drive by there, and there's nobody in the parking lot. And like, oh, but I can't park there.
Now, I will say that the whole point of the Dogwood lot is not 24/7, 365 permits for whoever wants to get one, like the other ones are. It's for employees and residents. And so it's the only lot where we're offering that permit. So everybody else can park in any of the other lots, or on the street, or in the garage, or in the free parking. But employees and residents who we were specifically making this permit for to make it a little bit more affordable for them, that's the only lot they can park in. So to limit that seems like a huge disservice to the people that we were trying to help.
I kind of agree with you, because even when we were talking about like kind of the overselling of the lot, I was already actually feeling bad that we kind of advertised like, hey, we're gonna provide affordable parking for like our downtown employees and business owners, and then, oh, yeah, just kidding, we're gonna take it, like, I don't know, that makes me feel kind of bad to back out on it.
But I guess the other side of it is, you know, people who of means can just buy a permit. You know, I realize that most of them are probably businesses, so they're at least going to show up Monday through Friday probably to park someone at that time. I just think that the risk we run is, I'll just use Saturday again, it's a Saturday afternoon and there's 3 cars in that parking lot.
Almost everywhere in downtown's open on Saturday, though.
I got that, but I mean, on Saturday, there's normally fewer cars in the parking lot in general because it's a Saturday. And people can't park in that lot at all because they don't have a permit. And, which of course drives them into which I guess is the goal of this, to put them in the parking deck. It just seems to me to be, and I could be wrong, so I can't say that I've gone out and done a parking study on Saturdays and Sundays to look at that lot. But I don't know, I just think that to make that lot permit only all the time is running a risk of alienating people that could park there on other times of the day when the permit people are not going to park there.
So then you would want to mix permit plus meter.
No, I'm not saying put the meters out there. I mean, I don't know, whatever the middle
You're
one is.
looking at the middle choice there,
middle one, yeah.
9 to 7, Monday through Saturday.
So it's permit Monday, during enforcement hours, it's permitted. Outside of enforcement hours, it's free.
Which I personally find more confusing. I would rather
is
you
all
say, can I park there or can't park there?
You can park there after 7 or before 9 a.m.
Yeah, I'm
and You can
not-
park there on Sundays.
As somebody who's coming into downtown, I find that more confusing.
But on Saturday, on Sundays, you won't be able to park at all.
That would be correct, yeah. And I think just to give some clarity to where our recommendations are all coming from, and one major point of whatever's done now and in March from an ordinance change, our goal is to observe everything that's happening over the next year, and then in your next budget, come back to you and say, here's what we saw. Because we don't have much raw data on this new system, right? We don't know, $2 per hour at a 60% occupancy on Main Street versus 70% occupancy on Main Street are extremely different from a revenue standpoint. So our goal is, after we install this, we wanted to make it the easiest to come down, become less restrictive from a council decision point in the future. Not to start at $1.50 and then, hey, say, council, you need to raise it another 50 cents. We'd rather give you the option to become less restrictive in a future vote. And that's where we're coming from a staff perspective.
So in other words, the 24/7, 365, your approach to that is to make it more restrictive.
It's the most restrictive. We want to make sure we have if we go out there and we see Jerry on Saturdays and Sundays, it's dead empty. then we come back to you and say, hey, here's what we've seen, here's what we've observed. We think we can become less restrictive on this lot. We can go to the 9 to 7 Monday through Saturday.
But we'd have to wait a whole year to do it.
That's right. Or, you go with the 9 to 7, or you go with the mixed, and, see how it goes, and
I mean, I feel like if we did the 9 to 7 or the mixed, then we would have to make the resident and employee permits more flexible to include other spaces that are not just dogwood. Which I know throws an entire monkey wrench in like everything you've done. So I'm just saying that's the only
Right.
thing that I think would be fair.
Okay, explain that one again to me. I'm just following you. I'm not.
So if you wanted to do dogwood lot, the 9 to 7 or the mixed, then I would say that the permits we're selling to residents and employees, which currently are only good for the dogwood lot, that would need to be expanded to include other lots, the parking deck, some other choices for them.
So the permits for the dogwood lot are only for the dogwood lot?
that's correct, exterior lots. So, I mean, hopefully in the future, we're adding additional exterior lots.
Right, but, so that is the exterior lot, not the
That's correct.
interior lot, and that's the only exterior lot.
That's correct.
It
And
was
so
kind
the-
of like the least convenient. I mean, it's further away from everything. That's why I think you guys had the best deal for that
Right.
permitting spot, right?
Yes, yeah, it's outside the MSD.
Right, yeah, I mean, I understand why it's the exterior.
And to Lindsay's question, so for example, if you did want to offer additional parking on the interior at the discounted rate, something we looked at early on and moved away from was the roof of the parking deck. However, to install that capacity, you're going to lose about 10 total spaces. And when those spaces are about $37,000 per space, we wanted to keep as many spaces as possible available in that deck.
Yep.
So you could
Can I
get
ask
the
a quick-
rooftop, but you're going to get 40-something spaces and lose 10 total in the total deck.
Can you go back or forward? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in here.
Yeah, so the mixed permit and meter, how is that different than the middle one?
So that is completely 24/7. It's got meters and permits available.
So anyone that doesn't have a permit can park there whenever they want, but they have to pay, including Sunday morning.
Exactly, we'll only
They have to park there.
we'll only sell 80% of the total inventory.
Which means we
Which is
would
the same
be
as leasing it to a
way
church.
over.
Yeah.
It's the same as leasing it to the church.
Well, essentially, like if whoever's using it is gonna pay for it, they're leasing a spot, like,
I mean, they're paying for it that morning,
right.
right, but they're not leasing it,
No, like not in a contract or
I
something.
got you, yeah. So.
And I don't think that would go over any better than not being able to park there at all.
You mean having to pay?
Yeah.
I can agree with that as well.
Oh, I don't know. I think people would be willing to pay to park on a Sunday morning if they wanted to be right across the street from their church.
It would be convenient.
It would be accessible.
Plus, there's a free lot down the block,
Yes,
right? Or across the street, get here a little
and
early.
free parking on that avenue.
That's correct.
Well, to me, the
Then-
mixed,
Then we'd have to have someone going through and
we're gonna have to have that anyway, right?
checking the license plates and,
But we're gonna have that anyway.
We'll have to
You gotta
have
make sure permit people are
enforcement
parking.
for the permits, yeah, so
Yeah.
we'll always drive through it.
okay.
So that's gonna happen all the time, every day.
Right, unless we gate the lot in the future.
Ooh.
That's again, one of those decisions where like, we're not ready to make that decision. so
Wait,
we need to
what?
See what happens.
We gate the lot, so you flash your permit to get in.
Right.
Which
and
I
we don't
think
have
you'd only have to do that if you found a lot of people that were parking in it that weren't.
Right.
I mean, I think signage will be
In
important.
essence, I mean, people are just gonna park there and figure out, are you gonna write me a ticket if I'm here for 2 hours on Sunday morning? And that's how we'll do our research, by the number of tickets that are written in there. Like, why am I write a ticket? Yeah.
I mean, I feel like as long as we have appropriate signage, that's their choice.
So where are we falling on this one?
All right,
Mixed and metered,
What?
I like number 3.
same.
Number 3?
Mixed permit and meter.
No.
You asked where, that's my vote.
Okay.
Confusing.
I'm only 24/7, 365. I think it's crazy that we would take the one option that employees and residents have and allow people who have many, many other options to use that lot.
But
Well,
if
you
it's,
could do a mix, you could do a permit Monday through Saturday or specific days, and then you could allow, but then that would be really.
So you're
confusing.
saying the 9 to 7, you're saying the middle one?
Well, but I don't want Everfree in that lot.
but I also say this, for the people that don't get the permit, if they want to pay the meter and park there, they can do that. Because it doesn't sound to me
We just
like-
can't sell as many permits. That's
Right,
what
I
you're-
think
that's
that
your
the-
trade-off, is
The
you're gonna
thing for me is
sell
the number of available
Well,
spaces.
120
Based
permits
upon-
versus 180.
Based upon what you've told us, it doesn't sound like we're going to hit the residents anyway at that one, based upon what you've just.
Oh, no, we've oversold it already. We've oversold it for overselling it based
For
on.
businesses,
The
yeah.
Yeah, but I'm
RSVPs.
just saying, so residents aren't going to get those, based upon the people that have already RSVP'd.
There are residents who have RSVP'd for that lot.
Okay, sorry, you implied a moment ago that it was almost all businesses.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of businesses. I can go get the,
Well,
full
but-
list.
I take your word for it, Brian. I mean, that's fine, just saying.
Yeah, I think what we've got is anyway, question, instead of doing mixed permit, Brian, could we do the downtown resident permit and, the employee permit, not mixed? And then the meter on top of that, because, explain the mixed permit.
That's a mixed lot, so it's not
Oh,
mixed permit.
okay.
Mixed
Okay.
permits and
Okay.
meters.
Okay, all right. So it would just be,
Mixed permit and meters.
Yes.
Okay.
But it'd still be the external.
And
yeah,
at that point, you could sell 125 permits. That's the difference at that level. At the 9 to 7 and the 24/7 levels, you can sell 180.
So the 9 to 7, you would still sell.
184, yeah. At the permit and meter level, you're only gonna sell 125 permits.
But could it just be metered only on Sunday? And then the other days?
We don't meter anywhere on Sunday.
Oh,
Sunday's free parking in the city.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's not a lot of difference between 3 and 4 then.
No, there isn't a
3 and
difference
4?
really.
I'm at 2 and 3.
Yeah, there's,
There is, because the 9 to 7 permit, Monday through Saturday, is fully reserved for permits. The bottom one, if you're mixing permits and meters, the meters can park in there. You can come pay a meter and park in there anytime between 9 to 7, Monday through Saturday.
Which also
And as
means,
many people could park in there as.
Yeah, exactly. To regular visitors, whoever can park at that point.
as who can fit. So if you find people
Right, if
that
you
are
can find parking
coming in
spaces.
that bought employee permits that are coming to work the dinner shift, and now none of them have a spot in there because we filled it with people that are paying a meter, now they're paying a meter and paying for their permit.
well, if they're working a dinner shift, they're gonna get there at 4 or 5 anyway. They're not
But
gonna be coming.
I also
at
want to
7.
point out that these would be more expensive than parking in the deck. The deck would still be cheaper.
Then
Yes.
parking,
The metered parking would be cheaper in the deck than in this lot.
no, they would be the same.
I thought
The metered parking in the surface lots and the parking deck is $1.50 per hour.
It's the street that's more.
The streets, the avenues within the district and
Oh,
Main Street are
okay, my
$2
fault.
per
Right,
hour.
right. This would not be the same as the street parking.
No,
That's what I was thinking.
this is a surface lot.
My fault, my fault. I thought it would be the same as the on street.
let me ask a kind of like real reality question. And Lindsay, I hear exactly what you're saying. I'm going back to the 9 to 7 and then free on Sunday. Reality-wise, looking out there day in and day out, Sunday morning is pretty light from an employee standpoint. The greatest use of those permits is going to be during the week, and I think I would argue Saturday. Reality-wise, do we think we would really fill that lot up on Sunday morning? Because I know the Baptist Church has numerous services. They have folks that park at their crosswalk location. A lot of people park at crosswalk, a lot of people down at the old post office, and then around, and then some. Reality-wise, and most of this is going to occur prior to noon on Sunday. And I'm thinking about, you got restaurant employees, but most of the retail businesses, when do they open on, but I mean, I'm just,
Probably.
I'm just curious if it really is, if we did 9 to 7 plus free on Sunday. I mean, Sunday is what we're trying to get. I mean, Wednesday night is gonna be, that's, Sunday night, I mean, Wednesday night's the church is gonna have to park somewhere else. So I'm just thinking,
Could you do permits only Monday through Saturday?
That's what I was thinking.
24/7 and free on Sunday?
And
for
Sunday
whoever wants
is a
to park.
non-permitted lot.
So it's not the whole 9 to 7 thing? Because I think that's the part I find even more confusing, because now I have to look at what day is
Yeah,
and
so
what
in other
time.
words,
Yeah,
on
it's just
Sunday,
enforcement hours.
Yeah.
there. But
on
yeah,
Sunday
we can make it that way.
on Sunday,
yeah.
you can
Yeah,
park in the
that seems
lot, you
reasonable.
don't pay, and there's no permit needed.
That's right.
Monday
Do
through
that.
Saturday.
But then Monday through Saturday is 24/7, only permits.
And I do have one question with regard to our permits and all this stuff, and that is, traditionally, we have also funky things on holidays. Does that still exist under this new system?
So if you have a permit and you're in a permit lot, you always have that permit, no matter if it's a holiday or not. Yeah.
Okay. So that would
Holiday
apply to
parking, though, is
street.
free for meters. Yeah,
Right, okay, so on the, that would only apply to street meters.
that's right. And surface lots, but yeah, just any meter.
I can live with, your permit gets you that spot for 6 days a week. On Sunday, you gotta take your chances, because anybody else can park there.
I can live with that.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then we're talking about just that lot.
Yes,
Yeah, we're just talking about just the Dogwood lot.
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, I can live with that because also on Sundays, the people who have that permit will have other options now. Without having to double pay, right?
Yes.
Unless they park in the garage. Is the garage, because the garage won't be free on Sundays.
Yeah, the garage is gonna be always,
Yeah.
always gated, yeah. So, handicap parking, time limit, and the rest of the fee schedule. What do we want to tackle next?
I'm good with no time limit.
Same.
Me too.
Okay. No time limit, check, easy.
And see how it goes.
Yeah, let's see how it
If
goes.
we have to
Right.
cut
Yeah,
it
I mean,
down.
and I guess there's some way you could actually look and see how long somebody paid for parking on the no limit thing.
If they're in the Park Mobile system, probably.
Yeah, right, so
good
you
data.
could get that.
In the kiosk data, yeah.
If you look like you're having like 40% of the people are staying over 5 hours, then maybe that's something we should look at.
And really what we want to look at is occupancy, right?
But at the same time, it's revenue driven, so.
Yeah.
I get it,
They're-
yeah, right, so I
If
guess.
they're parking all day,
people are like,
that's
"I can never
great
park."
as long as we have 90% occupancy or, whatever we're shooting for there. How about
I think
handicap
handicap
parking?
should pay.
Decibels and parking.
Pay.
Yes,
Hey, okay, done. The rest of the amendments to the fee schedule,
It's fine with me.
all good, okay. I have my marching orders,
All in agreement.
so I'm done. There is a motion for the fee schedule amendment in your packets.
and that would include what we just said.
So we would want to put as amended.
Really, no, these
No.
other decisions will come as ordinance changes, so you're just voting on the fee schedule amendment.
right.
Okay, all
And
right.
one other point is it does suspend all parking from the date it's effective until March, right?
March, yeah, payment in the surface lots will be.
All the
free
parking
'cause we're
meters are
pulling
gonna be
the
turned
meters,
off.
We're putting new meters in, all the meters.
It's all going to
are
be turned off between now and March. I
Until we
just wanted to
start.
bring out that point.
But
So it's
Sorry,
a,
thank you.
it's a parking
Dogwood will
free
not
for
have
all?
any meters in it, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Free for all?
Just big signs.
Till March. Mhm.
And would you let, either that or I can let people from the First Baptist who've been asking me know about this?
I'll let Mr.
Let them know.
Crafton know,
Okay.
because he's been asking me too.
So just one other small point I want to make about the employee resident parking. I hear that that's a really important part of this, so we're going to have to tailor the ordinance so that if people are no longer working, they no longer qualify for that permit. So they'll have to give it up. Some people aren't guaranteed a permit for a year or whatever. It's only, they're going to,
We didn't discuss that, no. We designed it from a pricing perspective for exterior lots and made it.
right, but what I'm hearing from, because the way we originally went into this is just that we were going to make it available to them first, so that they have it. But how important is it to you to make it always just like 5 years from now, so that that's just for, because people are going to move on or move, or, you know what I'm
Right,
saying?
and then the assumption is that we are not letting anyone else use that lot because we want to use it for employees, but if employees are not actually in fact the ones that are actually using it.
Or they're not employed in
they're not
downtown
employees
anymore.
Then,
I don't know how you could possibly police that.
Okay, and that's fine too. I just want to make you aware that it's not 5 years from, it just may not be. It may evolve into something. Initially, those permits are going, we're trying to make those permits go to employees and residents. But next year and 2 years from now, as people move and, you know what I'm saying? If we don't set criteria.
And I agree, we talked about that before, like trying to police that employees get it is virtually impossible.
Right.
We assume if you quit working there that you're gonna quit paying $25 a month.
Right.
And give up the.
As long as, I just want to make that clear, that's the approach we're taking, because, right? Okay. I just want to make sure everybody understands that's the approach that we're taking. Okay.
no, I understand what you're saying, for sure.
Yeah. I think we talked about before that Brian said trying to police that is almost impossible.
I get that, but.
I got you, yeah. We understand the risks that we are taking.
Keep my mouth shut.
Why?
Because I don't want to open up any more cans of worms.
We need a motion.
Need a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt the parking fee amendment resolution as presented.
Is there any further discussion? Not? Those in favor of the parking fee amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. All right, got that much done. All right, next,
Thank you, Brian.
resolution. Whoop, yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
You can say resolution requesting local modification to 160A, 301A.
Mayor, vote members, City Council, we are asking the City Council to adopt a resolution asking for a local modification to General Statute 168 3A1 A related to parking and metering of public streets and having the opportunity to use the revenue from the public street meters to service the debt service on parking lots and parking decks. I had a conversation with Senator Moffitt yesterday, and he's willing to submit that local modification to the General Assembly as a local modification. So we ask you to please adopt that resolution and subsequent proposed bill language to move that forward with Senator Moffitt and also our representatives.
Any questions? Motion?
Madam Mayor, I move that the City Council adopt the resolution requesting the Henderson County Legislative Delegation to seek a local modification to 160A-301A.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Not? Those in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Motion passes, and we can go ahead and send that.
Thank you.
Let's see, next, NCLM legislative priorities and appointing the mayor as the voting delegate.
Mayor Volk, members of the City Council, Mayor Volk and myself served on the one of the legislative committees for the league. We spent 4 different meetings, I believe, going through legislative priorities for this upcoming long session of the General Assembly. We narrowed those priorities to 16 as part of a committee, and the league is asking our municipalities to pick the top 10 legislative priorities that they feel are most appropriate, and ultimately they'll collect that information and then narrow that. The board will pick the final 10 based on the voting. So I took the opportunity to put those 16 priorities in a slide deck for you, also putting my recommendation, but obviously they are just recommendations and we can adjust as appropriate. But I'll briefly go through that just so to let you know what my recommendations are, but they are, we obviously can move them up and down as you may feel appropriate. First one being based on a priority of the City Council, and I won't read all of the slides, but I'll read the key point is the priority is to expand federal and state resources for affordable housing. We all know that affordable housing is a priority, and to work with the legislature to identify revenue streams and other ways to to provide affordable housing. Second is, and this goes along, I think, also with affordable housing, is to revitalize vacant and abandoned properties with enhanced legal tools and funding. I can tell you that one of the greatest hindrances to revitalizing abandoned properties and vacant properties is title issues. I know that our legal staff spends a lot of time, or we can spend a lot of time on title issues to try to sell properties that may be heir property or things that are hard to get them back on the market. So that would be a recommendation there. Third, to create an adequate and permanent funding service for local infrastructure. Lots of conversation about that, how important it is. We had a conversation on our CIP meeting about lack of stormwater funding, and parks funding is key too. So we'd like to, that would be a priority to find that additional permanent funding stream for local infrastructure. We would like to expand state transportation funding streams for construction and maintenance of municipal and state-owned secondary roads. We know that's a great need in our community as well as the county, so we would support or encourage that to be a priority to find that revenue source for that in many towns and invest. Along the same lines, support integrated and multimodal transportation solutions, look for bike, car, mass transit, and other means, and able to provide that connectivity, particularly in our towns like ours that are tourism-based, and this is key as we move forward with the Acosta and other greenway opportunities. Increase state funding for public transportation operations. As you know, many of our public transportation operations are not self-supporting, and it's difficult. We hear a lot from our businesses about route availability and the lack of good routes that do not encourage folks to use public transportation. So we would increase state funding for that. Expand incentives and funding for local economic development. I hope Ms. Brady would support wherever she went. She left. Anyway, she did support. As I speak about it, support funding for economic development. Expand incentives to encourage regionalization of water and sewer as well as other municipal services when appropriate. This is really not associated with any efforts we're having. It's more smaller utility systems that are struggling around the state because lack of revenue and lack of customers, but a good opportunity. Good safe water is important, and we feel like that would, as us being a larger utility, there may be smaller utilities in our area that could benefit from this and bring them into our system. Enhance state systems and resources for local law enforcement, recruitment, training, and retention. We know that is a key as we try to recruit new law enforcement folks. And then lastly, but most importantly, provide local revenue options beyond the property tax, including local auction sales tax and things like that. So we think that would be, and I believe those are the 10 that we would recommend to you. The ones that of the 6, just to, in case you want to switch some out, we not recommended, not because they're not important, but just because of the current, as it relates to what the city of Hendersonville is doing. Those were not, in my opinion, the most priority. Extend deadlines for the completion of federal infrastructure projects, particularly related to American Rescue Plan acting. We have spent our money, so it feels like that's not a high priority for us. Provide state assistance for yearly financial audits, ensuring that our adequate number of auditors. We have been fortunate, and our finance staff, while I think this is important for smaller units of government, knock on wood, it's not been a huge issue for us. Allow municipalities to use local resources and capacities to expand broadband access in their communities through innovative partnerships. Again, I think this is an important issue, but if you had to narrow it down to 10, I think we've seen a large investment in our community in broadband, and from a priority from our particular Hendersonville corporate limits, I did not rate it as a higher priority because as our utility folks and Tom Wooten will tell you, we have plenty of people digging up our sidewalks to put in fiber in our community. So wasn't quite sure that should be a priority for us. And a lot of work that Brian's done and others working with the ERC. Revised state contracting laws to better protect public entities from the effects of inflation. Again, noble endeavor, but not as high a priority in my opinion as some of the others that we did there. Update annexation petition thresholds to make voluntary annexations easier to issue. I think this is a higher priority. However, in the current legislative environment, don't suspect that that will go anywhere, so I felt like we should not move it forward until the legislative, we felt like it'd get favorable hearing, so did not list that as a priority. And then finally, provide authority to municipal water systems to recoup costs of cleanup from polluters, really related to PFAS and other chemicals, is just thought it was a lower priority compared to what we've been dealing with in our region. We, knock on wood, we've not had issues with PFAS chemicals in our drinking water, so felt like that was not as high a priority. So I gave you my 10 recommended and your 6 others, but obviously these are the city council's priorities. We can move them around based on anything from city council standpoint. So I'll stand by to answer any questions.
Questions?
Thank you for putting that together.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone want to move any of those last 6 up into the top 10?
No.
If not, then motion to endorse the top 10 recommended and point me to vote, which is just an online vote, nothing major. But,
Madam Mayor, I move the City Council appoint Mayor Volk as the city's NCLM voting delegate and endorse the following 10 legislative goals.
the top 10.
Sorry,
recommended.
the recommended 10 legislative goals,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay.
That was my mistake.
Any discussion? Not, those in favor of those goals and appointment of the voting delegates, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it, and again, thank you for putting that together for us. Next, special event fee amendment.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. I do not have a presentation for you guys tonight since I did that a couple months ago on the special event fees. I had presented in September, I believe, or in October, about updates to our special event fees and policy. So today on the agenda, we just have an updated fee schedule. And that is allowed because of the same presentation that Brian made earlier about why the fee schedule change can be made. And we'd like to do it this time of the year because we're getting into event applications for the new coming year. So it doesn't really work well to do those event fee updates in July. This has been an ongoing discussion among our special events committee as well as the Downtown Advisory Board. Today, this is just the events fee schedule, and we're still working on additional updates to the special event policy and to adapt for public safety needs and different things that need to be updated in that policy. The proposed fee updates remove all vendor fees except for the food vendor fees. So previously, the event fees were done by a vendor fee, which is very difficult to track and also not equitable among events that do or do not have vendors. These fees basically represent the cost and not the full cost of essentially public works and the impacts of a street closure. So barricades, additional trash, things like that. They do not cover the cost of off-duty police officers, off-duty fire, which are paid individually or separately by the events. Most of the fees for most of the events that have vendors, the fees are relatively close to what they've been in the past. This will mostly impact events that haven't paid any fees, events that haven't had any vendors, and it's relative to the cost of the barricades. Let's see. So essentially, vendors who have paid $0 will now pay some amount. We also already have in the fee schedule water and electric fees, and that's not going to change with the proposed updates that we've got here. And with that, I'll open it up if there's any questions, since this was something that we presented a couple months ago.
Questions? Okay. Guess it looks good. Discussion or a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move, sorry, go ahead, Debbie.
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt the event fee amendment resolution as presented.
Is there any discussion? Not those in favor of the event fee amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. You got that taken care of. Thank you. Next, discussion regarding placement of Kiwanis Club splash pad at Patton Park. Whoop, whoop.
Do you want to do this, or you want me to? Lindsay, you want to do this, or you want?
Well, Mark's
Yeah,
walking up there
well,
like
I
he's
mean,
ready
you
to say
guys
something.
can.
I think he's there to answer questions.
I'm just here to answer questions.
For a year or more now, we've been looking for a location of a splash pad for the Kiwanis Club that graciously offered to raise money to build a splash pad. We've looked at several different locations, but after Mr. Stillwalt bringing to our attention the need to replace the kiddie pool, for the lack of a better name, because of a leak, we came up with the potential solution of replacing the kiddie pool with a splash pad at Patton Park. I shared that in a memo to the city council several weeks ago, and just asking for general guidance. If there's concurrence or support to do that, then we can turn Mr. Stillwalt and his staff loose to move forward with design and facilitating the construction of a splash pad at Patton Park at the location of the current kiddie pool and the playground area, so that it will be there and adjacent to the pool. So.
I'm very excited about this. We've been trying to raise money for the splash pad for a long time, it feels like, and it was very hard to do so because when we would fill out grant applications, we would go, well, it might go here, and that's not very convincing. So to have this location, for it to be near the pool, be near the greenway, I think a part of me always knew that somehow it would end up at Patton Park, but I just didn't know how. And so thank you for finding a way. I think it's a perfect location, and the club is supportive. The president came and spoke earlier at public comment. I did speak with other members of the board. They are all supportive of the location. So I hope that all of us will be supportive of the location, so the club can hit the ground running again and raise some more of that money. I do think it's going to end up being better than any of us had hoped, so I'm excited.
I hope so.
Anything?
I have one suggestion. We've never done this in all my years of council, but I really feel like the two of you should read this motion simultaneously. Because it was an idea that both of you had, at different timing of it. In all fairness, that both of you, this was the priority for both of you. So I know that may sound corny, but I think it's apropos.
I know too, you guys are applying, it's like grant season applications with TDA, and I don't know if it actually helps the potential or if it helps leverage a larger grant amount. If the city were to partner with Kiwanis on the grant application, I don't know if that makes a difference, but if that's the case, if we would be able to partner in a way in applying for the grant, I think would give more money.
Yeah.
So if that's possible, I don't know what the legalities of that are, but.
They did award us $25,000 for the project in the last grant cycle. And I
We need
think
like
that-
75,000.
We need, I'm gonna go more than that, just because I'm gonna shoot for the moon. And we do have some other funding that was raised, so I believe we're at about 65,000, which is decent considering we didn't have a location. But yes, I plan to approach them, and I also, we have several other grants that are on the list to try, so I'm confident that we can get us quite a budget for this project.
Could the city do an in-kind donation of the property, the work of installing the piping and all of that, rather than actually cash at this point?
I think if we had a quantify, because we've been saying that the city has partnered with us for the location, partnered us with the installation, but if we include like designing it and the installation, if we had some sort of quantifiable amount, I think that probably would help.
It's very grant dependent.
Yeah.
It would depend on which grant you were going after.
All of it.
All right. Well, should we read it?
Well,
Let's
or what if Lindsay reads it and you second? I don't normally ask for a second, but you can second it.
Okay, are we ready? I move that the city council authorize staff to move forward with developing plans to construct the Kiwanis splash pad at Patton Park.
I'll second that motion.
All right, thank you. It has moved and seconded that we move forward with the splash pad at Patton Park. Is there further discussion?
Mayor, you were technically the OG splash pad.
That's true.
She may not know what OG means.
Like the original.
Oh, okay, years and years ago, yes.
Sorry, I
Okay.
didn't mean to, I didn't know that. Okay.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it. All right, one step forward. One big step forward.
One big
Okay.
splash forward.
The OG.
And when it's ready to open, we'll all be there with our bathing suits on.
Oh, I'm
Oh, yeah.
100% late.
There.
Okay, thank you for showing up for that.
Thank you, Jerry.
Next, rescheduling of the February 2nd and April 6th city council meetings.
And
And
what
August
Well,
3rd.
August
That's the
3rd.
title. We'll
Okay.
Okay.
go to that
yeah.
when we do the motion.
Yeah, Mayor Vogt, members of City Council, requesting that we reschedule the February 2nd City Council meeting to February 8th, and April 6th City Council meeting to April the 12th. And if, I didn't see the text or email, but I think the August 3rd meeting to August 9th. Those are Wednesday nights. Is that correct? Is August 9th?
Yes, August 9th is correct.
So asking City Council to move those meetings for a variety of conflicts on those dates, on the original dates.
What was the original date for August? Was it-
Third.
Third.
No one has a birthday on the 9th? Okay, good. Didn't ask that. Madam Mayor. Sorry, you ready?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Madam Mayor, I move that the February 2nd, 2023, the April 6th, 2023, and the August 3rd, 2023 city council meetings be rescheduled to February the 8th, 2023, and April
12th.
the 12th, 2023, and August the 9th, 2023.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of rescheduling those meetings, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Okay. Switch our calendars on that one. All right. Boards, commissions, committee appointments.
We making nominations?
Yeah, should I just go through it here? First is the Historic Preservation Committee. We have 3 appointments to make. We have 3 current members. I assume that they are interested in being reappointed. Do we know?
They are, yes,
Look at
ma'am.
that committee, yeah.
Plus, we have 2 additional applications. If someone would like to make a motion for appointment for historic preservation, can go ahead.
Are we gonna like nominate people?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Madam Mayor, I nominate Ralph Hammond Green.
Okay, Ralph Hammond Green has been nominated. Are there further nominations?
Madam Mayor, I nominate Crystal Colley.
Crystal Colley has been nominated. Are there further nominations?
Madam Mayor, I nominate Jane Brannigan.
Jane Brannigan has been nominated. Are there further nominations? Hearing none, we will vote on the 3 appointments or reappointments. Those in favor of Jane Brannigan, Ralph Hammond Green, and Crystal Colley for the Historic Preservation Committee, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Those 3 people have been reappointed. Next is the Planning Board. We have 5 slots. We have 6 applications. 4 of them are currently serving. Are those 4 interested in being reappointed?
Yes, ma'am, they are.
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, before we begin this one,
Yeah.
one of these appointees is filling Nace's spot.
Yeah, unexpired.
Right, so I guess for someone, we need to indicate they're filling that spot, or at least to let y'all know that when we're doing this.
Okay, so filling an unexpired term?
Yeah, so one of them is, somebody's
Do we
gonna
know
fill
which
that
one?
term. Well, I'm personally think the first 4 should just go for full terms, and then whoever else we pick would fill in for the Nace's
Expired.
terms.
All right, would anyone like to make an appointment for or make a nomination for a person to serve as for the full term for Planning Board?
Madam Mayor, I nominate Neil Brown.
Okay, Neil Brown has been nominated. Are there further nominations?
Madam Mayor, oh, go ahead.
Peter Hanley.
Peter Hanley has been nominated. Are there further nominations?
Laura Flores.
Laura Flores has been nominated. Are there further nominations?
Madam Mayor, I nominate Stuart Glassman.
Stuart Glassman has been nominated. Are there further nominations for the full-term slots on the Planning Board? If not, close nominations. Those in favor of Neil Brown, Peter Hanley, Laura Flores, and Stuart Glassman for full terms on the Planning Board, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it, we have that. Then there is one additional unexpired term. Would anyone like to make a nomination for that?
Madam Mayor, I nominate Samantha Jameson.
Samantha Jameson has been nominated for an unexpired term on the Planning Board. Are there further nominations? Not. Those in favor of Samantha Jameson to fill the unexpired term on the Planning Board say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it, and Samantha Jameson has been appointed. Tree Board is next. We have 3 slots on the Tree Board. We have 4 people who have submitted applications. None of them current members.
Madam Mayor, I nominate Rebecca Dole.
Madam Mayor, I recommend Joseph Peso.
Okay, Rebecca Dahl has been nominated for the Tree Board. Joseph, is it,
Peso.
Peso has been nominated. Are there further nominations for the Tree Board?
Madam Mayor, I nominate Serena Krismali.
Serena Krismali has been nominated for the Tree Board. Are there further nominations? If not, those in favor of Rebecca Dahl, Serena Krismali, and Joseph Pieso for the Tree Board, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it. All right, got through those pretty quickly. Thank you all. Next, Park and Recreation Master Plan Committee.
Mayor Vogt, members of City Council, I believe we need nominations or representatives from your constituent basis for each council member, and also a council member to serve on that Parks and Recreation Committee.
Okay. Just go down here. Roundtree?
What part are we doing
Would you-
first?
Are we doing our
Are we-
individual appointments?
Yeah, I think we're each appointing an individual.
I don't
Who
have any recommendations. I don't have anybody.
Okay, well, maybe you can work on it for next time.
Yes.
Okay,
Virginia Teagle?
Virginia. Spell that last name for me, please.
Tegel?
Tegel.
I believe that's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, I'd like to nominate Hunter Marks.
I thought she was going to nominate you the
Hunter
way she was
Marks.
smiling at you.
Okay,
Hunter Jones.
Hunter Jones.
Hunters.
Two hunters.
Interesting.
They must be about the same age in that range with the,
Actually, they are.
No,
No,
Hunter
they're
Jones
like
is
opposite.
Oh,
much younger. He's a
okay.
former student.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good. And my nomination is Sarah Kowalik.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Hey, Sarah.
Yeah. So I think we can go ahead and approve those four and get one additional one from Ms. Roundtree next time. Those in favor of appointing Virginia Tagle, Hunter Marks, Hunter Jones, and Sarah Kowalik to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan Committee, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it, we have those. And then a council person.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Will we send like Jill an email with their contact information? Is that what you'd like for us to do? Okay,
Okay,
gotcha.
all right. Would be a good idea. Okay, and a council member. You want to,
Do you want to do it?
If no one wants to do it, I'll be happy to do it, but I've served on this before with the Berkeley Master Plan. So I can appreciate if someone else would like to do it, but
I mean, I would love to do it, but I don't know if I can add one more meeting. I'm going to be totally honest.
do you want to do it?
Do you want to do it?
I said I would
If you
but
wanna
but
do
I'm
it,
not-
I think
it's
you
not-
should.
I don't want to get in a dogfight on this.
Oh, I'm not
so-
going to fight anybody over this one. If you want to do it, especially with like your past history with the parks, I think you should totally do it. I nominate Jerry Smith.
Barry Smith has been nominated as the council member. Are there further nominations? Not, those in favor of Jerry Smith as member of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan Committee, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say
Oh,
no.
I didn't even say aye, sorry. Aye.
You didn't even vote for yourself, Jerry.
The ayes have it, and we have most of our committee. Okay, will staff contact people to get an initial meeting together
Yes,
then?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. All right, check that one off. City council comments, anyone have anything? If not, city manager report.
Only one report. At your December meeting, we adopted a resolution to begin conversations about establishing a water and sewer commission with Henderson County, and completely understand from city council that this is about starting the conversation. I have had phone conversations with County Manager Mitchell, and would like to just brief council that Mr. Mitchell and I are going to meet next Wednesday. I would like to invite the mayor, if she's available next Wednesday morning, and if the mayor's available, I would suggest that upon the mayor's concurrence, that we invite the chairman of the county commission so that we could at least talk logistics and talk about how we can move the conversation forward to evaluate whether this is something both boards want to move forward with. So I would just make that as a make sure from a consensus everybody's agreed to that, and that the mayor would be available and agrees to invite the chairman of the county commission to join us for the four of us to meet.
Anyone have any objection to discussion? Okay?
Thank you.
And other than that luncheon, I can be available anytime Wednesday.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Closed session. Anyone want to make that motion?
Oh, that's right, it's a long one.
Okay, it's a long one.
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council enter closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11, A 1, 4, and 6, to prevent the disclosure of information that is privileged or confidential pursuant to the law of this state or of the United States, or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes, to discuss matters relating to the location or expansion of industries and businesses in the area served by the public body, and to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, and character, fitness, conditions of an individual public officer.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Not those in favor of entering closed session,